Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our event, Indian Tennis Seminar, on the theme of Unite and Emerge Stronger. When we thought about this event, when we conceptualized it, our focus was to create a session of knowledge sharing where we could bring experts from across India. We've got an excellent panel of experts who will be presenting on different topics, and create a forum for discussion, engagement on player development topics, and to provide a boost and support to the Indian tennis fraternity, coaches, players, parents, and fans, all who've been impacted by this pandemic that has been so severe, particularly our coaches whose programs have been closed now for the second year in a row. So we hope that through this event, everyone receives some encouragement and boost, and we bring our community together. I want to thank our organizers, Mohali Lawn Tennis Association, particularly Mr. Gaurav Chadda, for working with me right from the start on this event, to Enerzal for their support and sponsorship, and the whole team of people that have been working to organize this event, and also the presenters, our experts. Thank you so much for coming to our event, sharing your knowledge. We really appreciate the time and effort that you all have put into this event. And I want to thank all of you who have come here to participate in the event. By coming here, by sharing your time, you're showing your spirit, your support to our community. We really appreciate it, and are grateful for your participation. So looking forward to a wonderful event that we have got scheduled here. I'll go through quickly the event flow. We will have different topics, sessions, each of about 25 minutes. I will introduce the presenter. The presenter will go through their presentation, which will be about 15 minutes. And we have kept about 10 minutes at the end of the presentation for Q&A. So we request the audience to let the presenter go through their presentation and then submit your questions through the chat in the Q&A part of the presentation. Great. So with that, we'll start with our first presenter, Radhika Tulpule Kanitkar, who is the current coach of the Indian women's national team that recently played against Latvia. In Latvia at the Billie Jean King Cup event, for the first time, the Indian women's team reached the World Group playoff, and they put together an excellent performance. So Radhika is the coach of that team. She's also a level 3 ITF coach and runs her program in Pune, and is a former player for the national team and ex-national champion. So really looking forward to Radhika's topic, which is the differences in male and female player development. And from Radhika's perspective, her journey of having gone through as a player, how we can create equal opportunity, equal encouragement and support for both boys and girls, and particularly keep girls playing tennis through their junior years, but also support them to keep playing through their adult years. So wonderful topic to start off our event. And Radhika, over to you.
Thank you, Harsh. So I think we'll get started with the presentation right away. Just give me 1 second. Sorry, I just need to, I can't change the slide.
Just press down arrow.
Got it. Yeah, I got it. Thanks. So here we are, everyone, welcome. I hope you enjoy the session. So basically, we are going to stress a little bit on how we as coaches need to, we are training boys and girls at the same time in our coaching academies. So how boys and girls, I mean, what are the differences which as a coach we need to keep in mind when we are training female players and when we are training male players? So the discussion is we are going to touch on these following aspects. So physiological aspects, fitness aspects, the technical aspects which we need to keep in mind, our tactical aspects, as well as the psychological aspects. So I'll be touching on each one of them rather quickly. So in the physiological differences between boys and girls, this is what we have here. So the male structure is more suitable for throwing actions, and females have lesser shoulder width. So I think when I'll move ahead to the technical and tactical point of view, as coaches, we often have a tough time teaching women players the kick serve. So this is one of the reasons for that. As well as the muscles and the fat percentage is concerned, we have different fat levels in male and female. The blood, the height and weight, and the motor development also varies for girls and boys. So these are the things which we need to touch about. There's about 10 to 15 kgs of weight difference between boys and girls, and a 3-4 inch difference between the average heights. The maturity for the girls and boys do happen at different age. So that is another important thing I feel which we coaches do need to keep in mind. This is a general chart which shows the difference between the height of the male and female players. So you can just go through that. Next, we move to the fitness components. So we have agility and speed, strength and power, elasticity and flexibility, and endurance. So again, in strength and power, because of the less testosterone levels, which differ in boys and girls, girls don't bulk up as much as guys. So also there is a big difference in the upper body strength for both. So we as coaches, I think we need to start weight training earlier for girls. And also a lot of medicine ball practice during their tennis, which can be incorporated. I think now, I mean, we have a lot more other equipments like the TheraBand and everything, which, we should start using for the girls rather early. The endurance level, because of the differences, they have lesser oxygen carrying capacity. They have smaller heart and a more body fat percentage. So we also need to introduce a lot of aerobic and anaerobic training for the girls. Flexibility, yes, the limbs, hands and feet are shorter in females, but they have more muscle elasticity. So yoga needs to be introduced for faster body recovery again for girls. I think this particular thing, I think for me, when I was playing, I think I started yoga at a fairly later age. So, my flexibility is still a bit this thing. So yoga is a very important thing for girls, which need to be, we need to keep them flexible. Speed and agility, because females have wider and flatter pelvis, we need a lot of use of reaction drills and a lot of agility drills for them. And I mean, if these drills can be done on the court with the coaches, in India, I know that we have our fitness trainers different and our coaching differently, but we as coaches should also try and incorporate these fitness components while training for them on court. I think it really helps a lot. We move to the technical differences, where we're going to talk about these ground strokes and volleys and services and returns. Similarly, if you see, the girls' tennis is more flat, whereas men play with a lot more spin. So the use of double and backhand is also much higher for females than male players. Now with the tennis, which has changed over, over the years, I think we need to introduce topspin to female players. Normally because they hit the ball flat, we see them, having much larger backswing so that they get more linear momentum and they can hit the ball much with a lot more power. Use of, double hand backhand, as we know, girls, the percentage of single hand to double hand backhand in women's tennis, most of them are using the double hand backhand. So it's a strength in women's tennis. Volleys over it. So basically net game, I think, the girls are not very comfortable coming into the net as much as guys are. So I think it is very important to make them very comfortable coming forward and moving into the net at an early age. So, they get very comfortable in that part of the this thing. It's not that we cannot volley, it's not that we can't volley, just that, we've not been introduced to that thing from an early age. So if we can introduce as coaches, the net game at an early age, it will really help players a lot. Again, service is the same thing, topspin is slice. So a lot of girls tend to have the slice serve, use the slice serve more than a topspin. So again, we should, I feel, teach the slice first, but definitely in today's power tennis, teaching the topspin serve to female players, I think is extremely essential. Return of serve, I think, which is one of our strength, female players, they are better returners. So lot of drills focusing on the return of serve should be taken for the girls. We move to the tactical differences. Again, similar things. So again, ground strokes, setting up drills where, we teach them to use the angles of the court, teach them effective shot selection. That is a very important thing as far as women's tactics is concerned. And basically teach them to attain a very aggressive position on the court. Volleys, again, like we spoke about, we introduce a net game to them earlier so they get comfortable in that part of the court. Serve, just what we spoke about, the slice serve versus the topspin. But a lot of serve and the second shot drill is, which I would like to mention specifically, is such an important tactical component as far as women's tennis is concerned. So honestly, I don't see that happening too much of wherever that I have seen, but I think we should definitely work on it pretty much every single day. Return of serve is our strength, so we try to, practice it daily and teach them to get into an aggressive position while returning. Also, variety is something that, we need to add in with girls' tennis, teach them the slice, the drop shot. A lot of times the tennis we see is all, going bang, bang from the baseline. But variety is something which we should teach the girls, which would help them play better tennis and which would also help them a lot in doubles. We move to the psychological differences. So basically, as we have anxiety. So, females are, I think, a little, I can say, a complicated species. So we tend to, think sometimes too much. So it is very important and very crucial when we have male players, teaching the girls to understand their thinking and see where they're coming from, So giving them that confidence, setting up the drills. Again, shot selection will help them mentally as well. So it's another, developing routines is also another very, very important thing, which, helps them ease out and, relax before each point starts. Emotions, they are very sensitive. They can suffer from depression. Coaches, now when we are talking to them, we should try and refrain from negative talk. It affects them. It might be a small thing for the guy coach, but because it's a girl on the other side, she may not take it in such a simple manner. So it tends to get affected into me by training, where it was not a deep for the coach, it was a big for me, and it kind of got a bit tough. So, we as coaches now, we got to be careful on that front. On the other hand, I think girls tend to be more committed and disciplined, more focused during practice. So we as coaches, we need to really have that and keep that as the center of focus, and make them better tennis players. Dependency, yes, they are dependent. I mean, if you see girls matches, very often we see, after the point, we see mainly the girls more, watching in the players box, trying to speak something to the parents, to the coaches. So, that is something which, again, it's a physiological difference. So we coaches have to keep in mind about that while training them. So basically, the role of a coach when we are especially training female players, I think it's a difficult role. Sometimes now when I teach male players, I think I find it much more easier because, the little things, they don't mind, and, stuff like that. So it's a very challenging task for us coaches, but as coaches, we need to understand these differences. So when we are coaching male and female players, we keep them in mind, and we can teach them accordingly. Definitely a more positive talk and helping them be motivated all the time is what we do need to do when we work with girl players. Again, a lot of patience is required to teach them. Not an easy job, definitely. And like Harsh said, it's important to keep them in the game and, make sure that they continue and they enjoy the sport. So that, nowadays, I'm sure everybody knows that a lot of our Indian players are taking US scholarships as undergrads and taking that advantage. So, I mean, there's a very thin line whether you can make it or not, but it is our job to encourage all the players to continue playing, because I know the Indian education system is still very this thing. So we have a lot of dropouts, especially after 10th standard, or, girls in that age. So I think as coaches, we really need to address this issue and keep them motivated, make them enjoy the sport. And there is a lot more. I mean, so many girls have now gone also on a US scholarship. So I think that's a very, very important opportunity for them. And we should help them, get there. So I think that's the end of my presentation. I ran through it kind of quickly. There's so many things to discuss, but I'm open to any questions that anyone have. You.
Thank you, Radhika, for the presentation. If there are any questions, we definitely can send them through the chat function from the audience. But Radhika, I can start with one question. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
I can start with one question. You touched on the emotional aspect of coaching both boys and girls. Can you expand on that a little bit more? Maybe how at the junior level you train the girls, and then also what differences you see at the senior level in the national team? How do you manage? How do you coach those players differently?
Okay, so I think basically, I mean, even when they reach, let's say, the professional levels, I mean, we have the French Open going on now. I mean,
I think, Radhika, we lost your audio. Sorry, everyone. We'll just wait another 30 seconds. Hopefully, Radhika can reconnect her audio. If there are any questions, please turn them in via the chat. Good to see some comments coming through. And while Radhika is reconnecting, I think all of us coaches, we are working with both boys and girls, and it becomes important, as Radhika was saying, to be mindful of how the different genders perceive different things. And for us coaches, particularly men coaches, if we are teaching girls to understand their psychology, understand the best practices, to do our best to learn and to grow, and to make sure that through our words, through our actions, we are providing a good experience, a positive experience for both boys and girls. We cannot just assume that. And so I think this is a very valuable presentation to understand the differences, as Radhika was saying, in the physiology, what girls can do. You may train boys and girls slightly differently. She mentioned the fitness side. Maybe Vijayji, if you want to talk a little bit, as you're our expert fitness trainer here, on you maybe expanding a little bit more on what Radhika said about some of those physiological differences and how we should incorporate that into our coaching and training boys and girls. Sorry, Vijayji, your audio is off. Yeah.
What Radhika just expressed is pretty informative, and really sends across good message and information to the audience. As she was talking about, it is obviously there's quite a gap, and there are many protocols that when you train a male and a female, athlete, there are many things are to be taken into consideration. The levels of play, like the level of tennis they play, what type of their physical conditions, their genetics also come in place, because it is important to take into consideration the genetics. And the one thing that I heard a message across Geeta on the on the chat. It's important to maintain a very healthy percentage of fat for male and female. Sometimes we really ignore these aspects of training. I mean, during training the players, like we just pass it off. To be very honest, we rather depend on our raw system of training, as we Indians are famous for. Not really using too much of the science and all that stuff. So it's important that a male athlete should work across at least 12% of the body fat, and the girls at least between 21 and 23, to be honest. But nowadays, if we go internationally and we see some other European players and other girls down in there, if you will see, they're maintaining a very good, muscle mass in their body. They're training really hard with the weight training, which used to just go as a pass-it off kind of a thing. They used to train more in agility and endurance. So now the trends are really building up where actually the girls are starting to training like the way the male athletes, train. They're really grinding themselves up and training hard. And yes, the results have been outstanding, if I tell you. In fact, if I talk about our Indian athletes, female players like Ankita Raina and many others who are following the suit, they're really training very well and really, maintaining good levels of muscle and fat percentage. So I think it's a great trend wave and that we Indians have started to adapt to.
Great.
Yeah.
We appreciate your thoughts on the differences. Radhika, you're back. I think you're.
Yeah. Hi. Sorry, I lost the internet.
No problem. Radhika, there's a question from Vishnu Vardhan. Vishnu, welcome to our event. Vishnu is a Davis Cup player for India, an Olympian. So thank you so much for joining us. Great question. The question here, Radhika, is how important is it to introduce these aspects in women's tennis? Like you were talking, the technical aspects, the net game, the top spin, bigger serve. Would this not make a game shift the game style? And so, women's tennis tends to be a little bit more dominated with the baseline play. But if you can expand on introducing those net play you talked about early on, and the benefits of that, maybe you could share a couple of drills too that coaches can do with their players.
Sure. Hi, Vishnu. It's nice to have you with us here. So basically, I feel by the age of 14, pretty much a player's game style should be set. What type of game is she going to play? So the introduction to all the variety shots or coming into the net and stuff needs to be done before that, so that you know, they don't get stuck behind the baseline. And like I said, it will help them a lot in doubles also. And you know, we want them to have an all-round game, and not especially with the Indian girls. I mean, I'm sure you've seen a lot of you playing at the highest level, so we honestly don't last a best of 3-setter match from back behind the baseline. So sometimes if we have these you know, if we have all these variety shots and we're comfortable coming into the net, the slice, the drop shot, you know, it can definitely, I mean, we can play tactically much smarter than them, and we might just have a better chance rather than, you know, hanging on the baseline and pretty much tiring out. So I mean, from that point of, from a tactical point of view, I feel it's very important to introduce them to the different strokes of tennis.
Yeah. And I just add to that, I think that we want players in general, both boys and girls, to develop an all-court play, right? The more options you have, the better it's going to be for you. It's always good to have different options on the court. If your baseline game is not working, you can shift it up. You can start coming to the net. Maybe you can throw in a serve and volley. So both for boys and girls, it's, you know, I'm always working, or we're in our program always working on the all-round game. And just as a father too of a boy and a girl, you know, I feel that I'm always just looking at them equally. The same, you know, girls are very capable and they can do a lot, and it's just giving them the opportunity. And I think that from our perspective, just kind of approaching the situation as the same. And it's amazing to see the level of tennis that the women are also playing in the world. And you know, I think all of these aspects of developing both boys and girls, giving them equal opportunity, giving them equal support, is a wonderful way to grow the game and to give each player the opportunity to succeed. Radhika, thanks so much for the presentation. Any concluding thoughts, or maybe we can take one more question. Radhika, there's one question. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think I'm off again. The lights are coming on and off, so I keep getting logged off.
I think there's one more question on the fat percentage. It's to do with the physiology, but we had Vijayji answer that. So
perfect.
But thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, and we really appreciate it. We will now transition into our second topic session. This one will be, our presenter will be Mr. Gaurav Chadda, who is the owner of Roots Tennis Academy in Chandigarh. Mr. Chadda is ITF Level 1 coach and is a tournament director, has created a very strong tournament structure in Chandigarh, organizes lots of events, and through his experience, he's going to share about tournament play for organizers, for programs, for coaches who want to start offering more tournaments. How do they create a tournament structure? What tournament should they select? Mr. Gaurav Chadda is going to share with us viewpoints on that, and also some tips for players for how do you include tournament play in your calendar. So Gaurav sir, aap abhi presentation, over to you in the presentation, and I'll let you share your screen.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Gaurav Chadda. I'm Secretary Mohali Lawn Tennis Association, and coaching and players development here in Roots Tennis Academy. Today, I would be telling about the tournament structure here in India. और इधर हमारे इंडिया में आईटा एक बहुत बड़ा रोल प्ले करता है प्लेयर्स डेवलपमेंट के, जिसमें बहुत अच्छा स्ट्रक्चर मिलता है प्लेयर्स को पार्टिसिपेट करने के लिए और अपने इंडिया लेवल पे अपनी रैंकिंग्स बढ़ाने के लिए. I will start with my presentation. As organizers, if we want to organize a ITA event, the requirements for that, a venue must have minimum of 3 courts or 2 lighted courts having the same surface with minimum of 380 lux and 12 units per court. अभी टूर्नामेंट कोई भी कंडक्ट कराने के लिए मिनिमम 3 कोर्ट्स रिक्वायर्ड है, 32 का ड्रॉ होता है, उसमें लिमिटेड डेज होते हैं, अलग अलग कैटेगरीज होती हैं, TS3 है, TS7 है, उस हिसाब से जो आइटा ने एक शेड्यूल बनाया है, एक रूल बनाया है, मिनिमम ऑफ 3 कोर्ट्स भी है. The next is the venue should have separate washrooms, changing rooms for boys and girls, and if possible, canteen and small eating hub should be there. जहाँ पे प्लेयर्स के लिए अलग से रूम चाहिए, चेंजिंग रूम चाहिए. अच्छा ऑर्गेनाइजर जो है वो सारा कुछ मैनेज करके पेरेंट्स के लिए वेटिंग एरिया होना चाहिए, और अगर हो सके तो ईटिंग प्लेस होनी चाहिए वहाँ पे एक अच्छा टूर्नामेंट ऑर्गेनाइज करने के लिए, जिसमें कि प्लेयर्स अपना रेस्ट कर सके, वेटिंग एरिया हो. एंड स्टाफ रिक्वायरमेंट्स, क्वालिफाइड टूर्नामेंट रेफरी जो आपके ड्रॉज देख सके, सीडिंग दे सके और सारा आपका शेड्यूल बना सके. एक अच्छा टूर्नामेंट ऑर्गेनाइज करने के लिए सारा वेल प्लान्ड होना चाहिए. पहले से आपको प्लेयर्स को, पेरेंट्स को वेल इन टाइम आपको इन्फॉर्म करना चाहिए. आपको कल का अपना शेड्यूल अपनी वेबसाइट पे, फेसबुक पेज पे और आप व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप के थ्रू भी कर सकते हैं. आपके साथ सपोर्ट स्टाफ होना चाहिए जो इन बिटवीन द मैचेस दे कैन सी थ्रू द पॉइंट्स, और कोई डिस्प्यूट्स होते हैं, और साथ में डेफिनेटली ग्राउंड्समैन होने चाहिए टू मेंटेन द कोर्स. The main part is the affiliation with the state and national association. कोई भी आप अगर एक टूर्नामेंट ऑर्गेनाइज करना चाहते हो नेशनल सर्किट का, आइटा का, तो पहले आपको अपने स्टेट एसोसिएशन से एफिलिएशन लेनी पड़ेगी, उनके साथ जुड़ के काम करना पड़ेगा. जो स्टेट एसोसिएशन है वो ही सारा ऑर्गेनाइज करती है, जितनी वहाँ पे अकेडमीज हैं, कौन कौन से टूर्नामेंट है, उनकी डेट्स क्लैश नहीं हुए, और सारा उनका शेड्यूल जो कि आइटा के अपना अंडर आके उनसे टूर्नामेंट्स आपके अप्रूवल होते हैं और उसके अंडर वो कर सकते हैं. नेक्स्ट इज हमारा आइटा टूर्नामेंट जो सीरीज है, उसमें टैलेंट सीरीज से हम स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं. इसमें TS 3 days होता है जो हमारा फ्राइडे से स्टार्ट होके it can be ended on Sunday, or you can start it on Monday to Wednesday. The next is TS7 जिसमें हमारे 2 दिन क्वालिफाइंग राउंड के होते हैं, सैटरडे संडे, और मेन ड्रॉ का मंडे टू थर्सडे. मैं सजेस्ट करूंगा कोचेस से कि अगर वो कोई भी नया कोई अपना टूर्नामेंट ऑर्गेनाइजर कोई टूर्नामेंट कंडक्ट करना चाहता है, तो व्हाट यू कैन डू, यू कैन स्टार्ट विद लोकल टूर्नामेंट्स, your academy tournaments, then onwards go for these tournaments like ITA events, talent series. TS3 is a good option. TS7 you can conduct. Even CS3 and CS7 आपका अपना अंदर से जो आपका स्टाफ है या क्वालिफाइड कोच है, he can manage as a referee. जो अपने नेक्स्ट सीरीज है, सुपर सीरीज, नेशनल सीरीज और नेशनल्स, उसमें हमें रेफरी आइटा अप्रूव चाहिए और वो सेंड कर. तो ये सारा स्टेप बाय स्टेप अगर आप चलते हैं तो दैट वुड बी मोर बेटर. इसमें क्या है, जोन वाइज है. अगर आप टैलेंट सीरीज आप स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं और टैलेंट सीरीज से स्टार्ट करते हैं, तो इसमें जोन वाइज पार्टिसिपेशन होता है. जैसे नॉर्थ जोन के प्लेयर्स ये नॉर्थ जोन के TS में ही पार्टिसिपेट कर सकते हैं, और वेस्ट जोन ये अलग अलग 4 जोन्स हैं. अगर ये हम चैंपियन सीरीज में जाते हैं तो वो ऑल ओवर इंडिया दे कैन पार्टिसिपेट, बट फॉर टैलेंट सीरीज इट्स हियर रिटन नॉर्थ जोन, वेस्ट जोन, ईस्ट जोन एंड साउथ जोन. अभी रिसेंटली रूल्स रेगुलेशन थोड़े चेंज हुए हैं हमारे अंडर 12 प्लेयर्स के। एक कैलेंडर ईयर में दे कैन प्ले 18 टूर्नामेंट्स in a calendar year. Under 14 players can participate in 25 tournaments. Under 16 players can participate in 30 tournaments. और under 18 में कोई restriction नहीं है, they can participate जितना वो चाहे। अभी टैलेंट सीरीज के लिए ये जो अभी रिसेंटली रूल बना था कि जो जूनियर प्लेयर्स है या जो स्टार्टर्स हैं उनको भी चांस मिले, तो top 75 ITA rank players in their respective age groups will not be permitted to take part in TS tournaments in their age groups. उसमें क्या है, जो प्लेयर स्टार्ट करते हैं उनको भी चांस मिल जाता है। टॉप रैंक प्लेयर अभी रिसेंटली क्या होता है, अगर जो टॉप रैंक प्लेयर है तो वो जूनियर्स कहीं नहीं खेलते या पार्टिसिपेट नहीं करना चाहते, क्योंकि उनको होता है कि हम आगे नहीं जा पाएंगे। तो इसमें ये बहुत अच्छा रूल बना है। लेकिन इसमें जो अभी पीछे कोविड के बाद थोड़ा सा चेंजेस लाए थे आइटा ने, क्योंकि अप्रिशिएट करने के लिए पार्टिसिपेशन सबकी, तो थोड़े टाइम के लिए रूल हटा था कि पार्टिसिपेट सारी कैटेगरीज में हर रैंक का प्लेयर कर सकता है, लेकिन अभी ये एप्लीकेबल है। There will be no restrictions in चैंपियन सीरीज ऑल रैंक प्लेयर। उसमें सारे हमारे प्लेयर जो किसी भी एज कैटेगरी के और किसी रैंक के they can participate। अभी पार्टिसिपेट करने के लिए प्लेयर्स का व्हाट आई फील एज अ ऑर्गेनाइजर, जो मैं नोटिस करता हूँ, प्लेयर्स क्या करते हैं, अपना टूर्नामेंट का प्लेइंग का प्लान नहीं करते और वो टूर्नामेंट कैलेंडर देख के काफी जगह अपनी एंट्रीज भेज देते हैं और बाद में देखते हैं कि 4-5 जगह उनका फैक्ट शीट में नाम डिस्प्ले हो रहा होता है। तो काइंडली उसको विड्रॉ कीजिए टाइम से, ताकि आपको कोई यू हैव सेंड द एंट्री, ये आपको नोटिस करना पड़ेगा। लेट विड्रॉल, इसमें पॉइंट्स कटते हैं प्लेयर्स के। इवन यू हैव टू, अभी पेनल्टी पॉइंट्स में आपकी जो थर्ड लेट विड्रॉल होता है उसमें आपके पॉइंट्स कटेंगे डेफिनेटली। टीएस 3 डेज और 7 डेज में 5 पॉइंट्स है। चैंपियन सीरीज में भी 7 पॉइंट्स है, लेकिन जैसे ये बड़ी कैटेगरीज आती हैं तो उसमें 15 पॉइंट्स हो जाते हैं। तो काइंडली व्हाट आई फील, आप सबको ध्यान रखना चाहिए कि हमारा लेट विड्रॉल ना हो, क्योंकि एज अ प्लेयर इट्स नॉट गुड। I think I have done so.
Thank you very much, Gaurav sir. I'll start with one question. You made a very good point on planning, tips for players कि planning करनी चाहिए टूर्नामेंट की। आपके एक्सपर्टीज में हाउ लॉन्ग शुड दे प्लान, कितने वीक्स की प्लानिंग होनी चाहिए? 2-3 वीक की प्लानिंग होनी चाहिए? क्योंकि कभी कभी प्लेयर्स जो हैं ये वीक खेल रहे हैं, फिर मंडे में डिसाइड किया कि मैं वेंसडे को खेल रहा हूँ टूर्नामेंट। बहुत टाइम ये होता है कि टूर्नामेंट आ गया, खेल गए। तो कितनी मीन्स आप क्या एडवाइस देते हो, कितनी वीक्स की थोड़ी कैलेंडर बनानी चाहिए?
As I think कैलेंडर हमारे 2-3 मंथ्स का होना चाहिए, जिसमें हमारा पूरा प्लान रहे आने वाले 3 महीने हमने कहाँ पे खेलना है, कौन सी कैटेगरी खेलनी है, और वो बहुत ज्यादा हेक्टिक नहीं होना चाहिए। तो कोच के साथ अपने आप प्लान करके अपना 3 मंथ्स का अपना प्लानिंग कीजिए और उसके हिसाब से अपना ट्रेनिंग भी और सारी जो एंट्रीज है वो कीजिए। There should be a time between of 3 months.
ये आपने बहुत अच्छी बात की सर कि 3 मंथ्स की प्लान होनी चाहिए और कोच के साथ बैठ के प्लान होना चाहिए। ये कभी कभी प्लेयर्स आते हैं प्रोग्राम में, खेलते हैं, लेसन्स लेते हैं, मगर फिर डिसीजंस जो है टूर्नामेंट की वो अपने आप ही ले लेते हैं। तो ये डिसीजन भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है कि कोच के साथ आप बैठ के थोड़ा प्लानिंग करके, ये बहुत फायदा होगा, क्योंकि ट्रेनिंग में भी फायदा होगा सर, क्योंकि जब हमें पता लगता है कि टूर्नामेंट आ रहा है तो ट्रेनिंग भी थोड़ा वो हम एडजस्ट कर सकते हैं। तो आपके ख्याल से व्हाट एज ग्रुप शुड स्टार्ट दिस प्लानिंग? ये प्लानिंग यंग एज से शुरू होनी चाहिए या आप अंडर 14 के साथ करते हो? एनी टिप्स फॉर दिस अप्रोच based on age of the players?
I think it can be started under 12, under 14 players. Under 10 में participation काफी कम करते हैं junior players, अपने local matches खेलते हैं. लेकिन the moment you start playing tournaments, the planning should be there along with you.
Right. और सर ये जो pandemic का जो impact है, तो अभी तो हमारा टूर्नामेंट स्ट्रक्चर जो है इट्स बिन क्लोज्ड. हमारा द प्ले हैज बिन ओवरऑल टेनिस प्ले हैज स्टॉप्ड फॉर ऑलमोस्ट नाउ कमिंग टू 2 months. Big impact on programs, on tournaments. Sir, how do you see the future? How will this come back? Hopefully we will get through the pandemic, things will open again. What will be the opportunities, what will be the challenges of restarting tournaments, in your opinion?
Definitely there will be some challenges. What I think, in between 1-2 months, we can start for junior category tournaments like talent series, TS3, no traveling in between the India level circuit. और उसके बाद धीरे धीरे स्टार्ट करके we can, लास्ट ईयर भी ऐसे ही किया था हमने. नवंबर में जब हमारे टूर्नामेंट स्टार्ट हुए थे तो पहले हमने अपने जोन के टूर्नामेंट्स ही स्टार्ट किए थे, अपना चैंपियन सीरीज और बड़े टूर्नामेंट स्टार्ट किए. और डेफिनेटली व्हाट आई फील के 1-2 महीने तक ठीक हो जाएगा और हम सब वापस होंगे कोर्ट्स पे.
सर ये जो टॉप 75 प्लेयर्स हैं जो आपने बताया, वो टैलेंट सीरीज जो फर्स्ट 1-2 लेवल्स जो हैं वो नहीं खेल सकते, राइट? बिकॉज दे हैव टू स्टार्ट एट अ लिटिल बिट हायर लेवल. मगर वो प्लेयर्स के लिए क्या क्या ऑप्शंस है? व्हाट विल बी द ऑप्शंस आफ्टर द पैंडेमिक? एंड ओवरऑल पैंडेमिक के बाद उतना ट्रैवल भी मुश्किल होगा. एक स्टेट से जाके दूसरे स्टेट जाना, इट विल नॉट बी दैट इजी टू ट्रैवल अराउंड द कंट्री. तो हमें स्ट्रॉन्गर लोकल टूर्नामेंट स्ट्रक्चर की बहुत आवश्यकता है. तो उसमें आप टूर्नामेंट डायरेक्टर्स, सारे जो टूर्नामेंट कर रहे हैं इंडिया में AITA के साथ, क्या आप कर सकते हो ताकि थोड़ा स्ट्रॉन्गर टूर्नामेंट स्ट्रक्चर लोकली हो टू हेल्प प्लेयर्स गेट मोर मैचेस एंड प्ले मोर टूर्नामेंट्स?
What we can start with, CS tournaments. और उसमें जो ये restrictions है वो हटा देनी चाहिए ऑर्गेनाइजर्स को और हमारी नेशनल बॉडी को, ताकि प्लेयर्स अपना ट्रैवल ना करें और वहीं पे अपना जोन में ही चैंपियन सीरीज और बड़ी सीरीज विदाउट रैंकिंग रिस्ट्रिक्शंस और टैलेंट सीरीज वो खेल सकें और पार्टिसिपेशन अपने और अपनी रैंकिंग्स भी सुधार सकें.
ग्रेट. तो सर ये these recommendations, because पैंडेमिक के बाद हमारा एनवायरनमेंट डिफरेंट होगा, तो ये सर जो आपने कहा था कि जो रिस्ट्रिक्शंस है वो अगर निकल जाए तो और प्लेयर्स विल बी एबल टू प्ले. तो ऐसे हम सोच के ये जो सॉल्यूशंस हैं we can bring and help more players play. Anyone else from the audience would like to ask questions on tournament structure, how to organize tournaments, or from a players or parents viewpoint? Any questions on tournament play?
Hi Harsh.
Hi Nishant. Go ahead.
Yeah, Harsh, I'm really happy that you have conducted this kind of an event at an international level. You know, you speaking all the way from the US and taking so much of time. You know, yeah.
Thank you, Nishant. But it's a teamwork, and all of our experts and the team in India has done a fantastic job. So I appreciate your comments, but it's really to the team, and the credit goes to everyone. So I'm grateful to be part of it. But please go ahead with your question.
Yeah. So my question would be, as of now, the pandemic is still on. I don't know, probably it's going to continue. So when would be the best time for us to conduct a tournament? As I'm speaking from Hyderabad, so can you please let me know how fast or when are going to start the tournaments? When are we all going to be back on the courts? Hopefully. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for your question, Gaurav sir. I'll let you answer, and then maybe I'll add a few things after.
Answer what I think most probably by 2-3 months we can start, and we can when the academies are open, we can start with our academy tournaments, local tournaments, and then next step would be ITA tournaments and the bigger events. Even weekly, क्योंकि अभी बच्चे क्या हुआ है कि इतने टाइम बाद खेलेंगे तो उनको भी थोड़ा प्रैक्टिस चाहिए मैचेस में पार्टिसिपेट करने के लिए और थोड़ा और बड़े टूर्नामेंट खेलने के लिए. तो बेस्ट वुड बी we would start with small tournaments or inter academy tournaments जो हमारे weekly round robins होते हैं या knockout tournaments होते हैं. What I feel.
Yeah, and to add to that, Nishant, it's a great question on when should we start. And from a player development standpoint, I think it's very important now as tennis restarts after the pandemic, and hopefully it will be soon, that coaches take some time initially to assess where the players are physically, mentally, emotionally, what is their condition. I think it's always good to give at least a couple of weeks, 5-6 weeks, maybe those initial weeks to focus on training, try to get their fitness levels up, their technical skills back, use that kind of like an off-season time of 5-6 weeks. We did this in my program here in January. And at that time, the focus was on the training, on the technical skills. And then after that period, when we moved to the second phase, we started to get them ready for tournament play, where we gave another 2-3 weeks of time for them to start getting into match play patterns, start accelerating the fitness a little bit more, start getting into some match play type speed and conditions, and then prepare them to go into tournament play. So you're looking at, a 6 to 9 week window to prepare. So I think one of the things is going to be important is not to rush into tournament play.
Exactly.
At least from my perspective, I always advise players is, to take their time, prepare well mentally, physically, game-wise, and then go into tournament play some tournaments, learn from tournaments, come back, train, improve your training, then go back to tournament play. I think that is the best approach. Sometimes I see players just playing too many tournaments one after the other. And then, they're losing matches for the same reasons. They're not taking time off to really improve. So that would be my advice on planning your calendar.
Thank you, Harsh. Thank you for your valuable suggestions.
Any of our experts want to add to that aspect of planning tournaments into their training calendar? Okay. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Geeta. You wanted to say something?
No, I was just going to second what you said, because many times we do see athletes have a burnout, and I think to recover is so important, particularly if you are traveling from cities or you're doing an international trip. It really takes a toll, and I think to have a training periodization is so critical to the performance.
Thank you, Geeta, for your thoughts. I think we lost you at the very end. but you were talking about training periodization. If you'd like to expand on that term, because that is a very important term, periodization. It's a little bit of a technical term, but for our coaches, for our parents, for our players to understand that term, if you can expand a little bit more on that.
Right. So in the trading cycle, we understand that there are the peak seasons, and I think it's very important that you also, like Vijay was emphasizing, if you have a very hectic weight training schedule, you really want to look at a different training time or versus a different training type. It could be your agility, yoga, like Radhika said, or you want to just kind of wind down. You could do a light cardio, or even go for a leisurely swim. But you just have to understand that when you have a very hectic training session, you want to taper that. Similarly, if you have a very hectic on the court training, you kind of want to have peaks, and similarly have weaning period where you're not overburdened, because it's so important that when you we'll talk about it in nutrition, when the training load is so high, your immunity is obviously going to be lower, and athletes don't realize that. And sleep is something that's so important again to rejuvenate. So training periodization is just to be able to play around with your training, to have very hectic sessions and then sandwich them with lighter sessions.
Right. Right. And this is, an important point Gaurav has brought out in his presentation on players planning. And I would also say one of the unique things about tennis compared to any other sport in the world is that the season is very long. You can play tennis, and even at junior tennis, the season goes right from January all the way till, sometimes at tournaments in December too. So it's incumbent on the player and the player's team to plan their season, because there's always going to be tournaments. And this is the unique part. You look at other sports, for example, in the US, most sports are seasonal. You look at football, American football, they play from about August to about January, February. Then they have a 4-5 month off season. You take basketball, there is an off season again of 4-5 months where the players get to recover, rest, train, come back to the next season. Most sports have this sort of seasonal schedule. Tennis is just very tough because it's all year round, and you can very easily get into overtraining, overplaying, and that's when a lot of times the injuries come in too. So I would recommend players, parents, coaches really planning it out and look long term. That's the other thing. You want to look long term at the player's longevity and really make sure that for young players, you're not overplaying, overtraining, playing too many tournaments. Gaurav sir, maybe one last point. From my tournament organizer's perspective, और जो planning कर रहे हैं tournaments की, आप जो season के बारे में जब सोचते हो, what are things you can do post-pandemic to maybe create a period of time for players to train, maybe where, the focus is on training, maybe a season where the focus is on playing more tournaments. इस तरीके का planning हो रहा है या are tournaments dispersed all around the year? आपकी क्या सोच है इस पे?
बिल्कुल ठीक बात है. हमारे टेनिस में ही ऐसा होता है कि सारा साल टूर्नामेंट्स खेले जाते हैं और प्लेयर्स रश करते हैं, ओवरडू करते हैं प्लेइंग को, टूर्नामेंट्स को. लेकिन व्हाट आई फील के हमारे नॉर्थ में तो जून जुलाई या जुलाई अगस्त में रेनी सीजन होता है, तो ये बहुत अच्छा है अगर हम इसको अपने प्लानिंग में कोचेस कुछ टाइम, लेट इट बी, it can be 10 months or anything around that, कि ऑफ सीजन हो, ट्रेनिंग पीरियड हो, जिससे प्लेयर्स को रेस्ट भी मिले. और ये तभी आइटा ने अभी रिसेंटली हर एज कैटेगरी के हिसाब से अंडर 12 के इतने टूर्नामेंट्स आप कैलेंडर ईयर में खेल सकते हो, अंडर 14 में, वो इसीलिए ताकि प्लेयर्स ओवरडू ना करें, क्योंकि बहुत प्रेशर रहता है हमारा इंडियन सर्किट में या पेरेंट्स का, कोचेस का, सोसाइटी का, कि आपका टेनिस खेल रहा है तो इसका रैंकिंग भी चाहिए और लॉट ऑफ ट्रैवलिंग सारा कुछ, मतलब वो अगर प्लान्ड होगा, कुछ बीच में ऑफ सीजन होगा तो डेफिनेटली सबको सपोर्ट मिलेगा.
Yeah, very good. So this is also one area that we hope the system will consider. कि किस तरीके से टूर्नामेंट स्ट्रक्चर किया जाए, व्हाट ना एक सीजनल स्ट्रक्चर किया जाए और थोड़ा टाइम मिले प्लेयर्स को अपनी ट्रेनिंग के लिए. तो वी टॉक्ड अबाउट मे बी a couple of takeaways, but I think I take 2 takeaways post-pandemic. One is a stronger structure of tournaments locally, given the difficulties of travel. And secondly, a better planned tournament structure where players have the opportunity also to train, play tournaments, and not feel so pressured, as Gaurav sir was saying, to always keep playing tournaments. So those would, I think, definitely help the Indian tennis system. Thank you so much, Gaurav sir. बहुत धन्यवाद. आपका presentation was very informative, and thank you very much. Everyone, we will now transition to our next topic session. We are very fortunate to have Ms. Geeta Galiyawar from Bangalore, and she is a sports nutritionist and a registered dietitian with deep experience in the field. She's associated with consulting the government of India, working with the Sports Authority of India, and working with athletes of all levels, including international level athletes on their nutrition. And for any player looking to maximize their potential, trying to improve, trying to go to the next level, nutrition is a very important piece of that plan. And we are looking forward to learning from Geeta on how best to improve our nutrition and improve ourselves as athletes. So over to you, Geeta.
Thank you so much, Harsh, and I thank Enerzal and the team. So I'm going to share my presentation, and I'll try and keep this as crisp as possible, and we'll take questions thereafter. I hope my presentation is on.
Yes, okay. Yes, Geeta. Yep, you're all set.
Thank you. So Harsh has also already introduced my history. So I've been very fortunate. I took up nutrition accidentally, but I've been very happy that I've been holding the fort. So today we are mainly going to look at how nutrition is very important, mainly food and fluids. So how hydration can enhance performance, and the right food and the timing before and after your workout, how it can impact your sport for not just improving your game, but how you can also enhance your recovery, boost your immunity, and definitely have a better body composition. So hydration is very critical and often overlooked. So what we don't realize is, especially in the younger athletes, when children have a lower ability of thermoregulation or sweating ability, so sometimes they are dehydrated. So I think it's very important as parents and players that you just have to take care of your water intake before your game, and don't wait for you to be on the court and wait to say that I'm going to be thirsty, but you just definitely want to look at your game even before you go on court. You have to be hydrated, and we'll look at that in the coming slides. So euhydration just means a state where you have had enough water to drink, so that itself can prevent your dehydration. Because dehydration increases core body temperature and tiredness, which means that your ability to play, particularly tennis being an outdoor sport, if it's going to be slightly warm, you are going to feel very tired, and you may not be able to play your full potential. So again, the duration of your sport, are you playing in a warm climatic condition, or your weather? Also, what is your state of your hydration based on your, like Radhika also said, if you're a female and you have a slightly more fat percentage, or if you see, muscles obviously have more water content. So based on so many other parameters, their hydration can get influenced. So what could be the simple solution? Just ensure that you consume water. Many times it's just plain water. You don't need anything more fancy. If you're playing in the warmer temperature, you want to restrict your dehydration to less than 2%, meaning if you're 50 kgs, 2% will be 1 kg of sweat loss or body weight loss. There are techniques where we train players to evaluate their sweat loss or loss of body weight so they can correct their dehydration. As simple as that. If you lose 2%, which is 1 kg weight, you just have to drink about 1 to 1.5 liters of water and ensure there is enough salt in that. So even to begin with, for example, anywhere between 4 to 7 ml of water you want to take per kg body weight, which means that if you're 50 kgs and you want 5 ml, you just drink 250 ml, which is just 1 glass of water. You don't need anything more than that. Ensure you take something salty in your food, or you are just taking, it could be just nimbu pani, it could be even buttermilk. That itself will ensure that the sodium will retain water in your body and prevent you from getting dehydrated. So also during your game, many athletes also sometimes just forget to drink water. Ensure that you continue to drink water. It could be a glass or two every 15 minutes to, half hour, 1 or 2 glasses. And ensure if you're playing more than half an hour, 45 minutes, you definitely need the salts. So if you're just playing less than 45 minutes, you don't need any carbohydrate. As simple as adding 2 tablespoons of sugar, jaggery, honey, Glucon-D or any electrolyte or sports drink can be helpful beyond 45 minutes to 1 hour of your game. And that can really improve your capability to continuing to play. Now, also, if you like your water infused or flavor, sweet and salty water helps you to increase your water intake. So sodium is extremely important because, like I already said, sodium retains your water. And if you're losing water when you sweat, you are losing a lot of sodium, and that itself can be one of the reasons. Sometimes athletes can lose as much as 1 teaspoon salt, which is, the amount of sodium that could be in 1 teaspoon, about 300, 400 mg of sodium, or 100 millimoles of sodium. That is the amount of salt an athlete can actually lose in a hot and humid environment. So you have to just ensure that you have your electrolytes in order to play better. Another good way of checking your hydration status is very easy. Just monitor your urine color. Try and remain as close to being pale yellow to transparent very rarely. On rising too. After your game and on rising, if you notice that if it's deeper yellow or darker shade, that means that your urine is hypertonic, which means that's very concentrated and you really need to take care of your hydration. Now, as I mentioned, if you face muscle cramps, the simple thing would be just to ensure that you are adding salts in your water intake. Okay, so even if you are consuming, say, about half teaspoon of salt, like I said, it could be jaljeera pani, or if you're taking tender coconut water, all you need to do is add about half a quarter to half a teaspoon of salt. If you use sports drink, then it's excellent. Then it's already in the right solution. Isotonic means it has 6 to 8% or the amount of carbohydrate in it. It's already ready-made. It's very convenient. If you are say on tournaments or you have a peak training session, then you don't have to worry about the exact dilution. You have it ready-made. It's very convenient, and you can take it readily off the shelf. Now, also, what do you eat before your training? So just about 1 gram of carbohydrate anytime between 1 to 2 hours before your game. That could be as simple as 1 large banana or 1 medium fruit. So typically you want to look at foods that are easy to digest. You want to avoid high protein and a lot of salads and whole grains, which have very high amount of fiber, particularly if you're looking at a very intense or a hectic training session. But some amount of carbohydrate foods, as I always give an example, a petrol car runs on petrol. You have to look at using carbohydrate foods before your workout, especially if you're underweight, you're not looking at weight loss, you want to retain your muscle mass. So these are based on the body composition goals, and eating just a carbohydrate meal before your workout can actually prevent you from not just getting tired, sustaining your game longer. And carbohydrates actually also help you, hydrate better. So even just consuming your carbohydrate isotonic drink with some amount of, sugars in them actually is good. Like many athletes, they think sugar is bad. I know a lot of athletes who do not take white rice, who do not eat egg yolks. So there are a lot of misconceptions, and sugar is the crux of an athlete's energy system, especially if you play beyond an hour. So do ensure you take carbohydrates before your workout. Now, beetroot juice, again, very popular among the player fraternity. So now understanding the amount of nitrates that you need, it's about 400 to 500 mg, which means that it would be 2 large beetroots, okay, over 400 grams. So juice is very popular because they're very strong flavor. So, but there are also other vegetables like rocket leaves, or your palak, or even lettuce. So try and incorporate these on a regular basis. You cannot cook with it, so you have to ensure that you are able to eat them raw, and you need to time it ideally 2 to 2.5 hours before your training, because this has a vasodilation effect, or increases your VO2 max, or your oxygen carrying capacity in the blood, because they expand the blood vessels. So that should be strategically used and on a continuum, which means that anywhere between 5 to 6 days a week for over 3 months, if you have a glass of beetroot juice just before your tournament, I'm sorry, it's not going to work. You have to keep at it, and a high amount of discipline needed. So ideally, half an hour to 45 minutes before, you really do not want to eat anything. But again, some of these foods, why I've put here is because they're quite popular, and cornflakes is quite sought after, not recommended, not healthy at all. White bread or brown bread can be had, but provided, again, you want to eat slightly slower digesting or slower absorbing carbohydrate. So it could be even dalia, oats porridge, it could be simple as a pulka wrap. Even peanut butter is quite easy and handy on toast, which can be whole wheat. So do not eat foods which are very fast absorbing on a regular basis. It may not be needed, but just a mix and match. Some athletes, younger athletes particularly, like to consume milk. Some athletes feel queasy, especially because milk sometimes can be uncomfortable. If you have your stomach full, it's difficult to play around. So this is individualized. These are generic examples I'm suggesting, but typically before you work out, you want to eat slower digesting carbohydrates, which I showed in the earlier slide. A fruit, a sweet potato, overnight oats, dalia, khichdi or porridge. So these are again quite handy options. Caffeine, very, very popular. So you don't need large dose of caffeine, just as simple as consuming as little as 1 to 3 mg per kg body weight, which means that, if an athlete of 60 kgs is using even 60 mg of caffeine, which could be either salt tabs with caffeine or, a caffeine gel. So there are many ways you could plan to use caffeine. Either you could use it before, or if you're looking for a very high kind of intensity of workout or a competition, or you could try using it sometime in your tournament towards the fag end when you're hitting the wall. Now, post-training, most important, always remember to rehydrate or take your water. You could simply continue your sports drink if you're in a tournament or you're at a training session and you don't have any other option. Simple as plain water, but remember to take your sodium so that there is no dilution or hyponatremia, which can aggravate your cramping. So salt is very important. 3:1 amount of carbohydrate and protein. In the first few minutes, ideally within 15 to 30 minutes, if you are not looking at weight loss, because then you are also losing weight, muscles, and you are having muscle catabolism. So muscle protein synthesis occurs ideally in a larger window period, about say 2 hours, but you kind of want to eat as early as possible, anywhere between 20 to 25 grams of protein, so which means 3 times more carbohydrate. Now, definitely also have, like I talked of training periodization, definitely look at also recovery and sleep, which is very critical. So in the coming slides, we are definitely going to look at some of the options. I think I've covered protein, carbohydrate, especially again, if you're looking at strength training, you want to keep your protein intake a bit higher. So if you see here in the examples, even if I say 1 gram of carbohydrate immediately in the first hour, that's the minimum, 1 or 1.2 grams. So it could be as simple as 1 medium pulka or 1 slice of bread or 1 katori of dalia or 1 katori of rice. Now that is about approximately 15 grams. So if you want to do about say 30 or say not 30, 1 gram, right? 1 gram is about 60 grams. So you do your math. You need 3 to 4 chapatis minimum. Or even your dals have carbohydrate, fruits have carbohydrate, milk has carbohydrate. So you just have to play around and quantify, and based on the athlete's requirement, if they are younger children and who need slightly more calorie intake because of their growth and training, then you keep your carbohydrate intake and protein intake higher. If they are looking at weight loss, reducing the fat percentage, then you're looking at a train low strategy where you're cutting down your carbohydrate intake either before or after your training. So there are many ways you can play around this. So for endurance, you may want anywhere between 1.2, 1.5 gram. But if you're looking at strength training, definitely protein intake needs to be higher per kg body weight each day, which is always a challenge. So milk is one of the easiest way to take your protein, and that would be about 7 grams for 1 glass. And also milk not only is high quality protein, very easy to consume, a high amount of leucine. Whey protein supplement, again, very, very easy to quantify. So you can definitely take about a scoop, which can be, again, almost 3 grams of leucine. And leucine is what increases muscle protein synthesis. So use what are easy and faster digesting. So that's very important. Now, if you see the Australian Institute of Sport, the Group A evidence-based recommendation, so sports drink and electrolytes go right there on top, and even similarly with the International Olympic Committee consensus. So these are the most fundamental and foundational nutrients that are needed. Just on a side note here, also look at your micronutrient deficiencies, overall balanced diet, very high intake of fruits, vegetables, very critical. Probiotics, especially if you're falling sick. So just your curd, dahi, a little bit of pickle. So fermented foods, again, add probiotics, and definitely a high fiber diet, which also increases good bacteria. Omega-3, very important, not only to increase your muscle mass, keep your immunity very high. My time's up. And I also look at iron, very important, because tennis is a impact sport. So there is a risk of anemia, and many times girls don't realize, especially if you're in the menstrual age group and there is already loss of blood. So impact sport can lead to foot strike hemolysis, so breakdown of RBC, not just those 120 days of that full red blood cell cycle. So you have to really watch out for your iron, ferritin, B12, particularly if you are a vegetarian. Okay, and just in the overall picture, look at your food, definitely your hydration and rest. All right, so good show, we made it. This was a rapid fire round.
Thank you, Geeta, for an excellent presentation. And we'll let you have your screen up here for a little more if people would like to note down your information and connect with you for further questions on nutrition. But one of the things that you talked about, hydration, which I thought was very interesting. And one of the things I found a big challenge as a player is how much to hydrate. And particularly playing in India a lot, very hot, very humid, we're losing so much fluid. But I felt at times maybe I was overhydrating. To try to compensate, it kind of drinking too much. And so you mentioned measuring based on body weight. Can you talk a little bit more, some tips for players and coaches as well on how we can help athletes to measure what is the right amount? And all of this should happen ideally in training, so that before we go into a match, we know how much water to take, how much should we be drinking? I think this is very important. So if you can expand a little bit more on that.
Sure. Are you able to hear me? There's a lot of rain here in Bangalore. So I can close my window.
No, that's good.
Okay. All right. So as I pointed out, to start your training session in a state of hydration itself is very important, because like I said, children have lower thermoregulation, younger athletes. And probably, I'm sure as a young athlete, you experience that. So they rely on thirst, and that's not a good idea, because thirst is not a good indicator for hydration. Because strategic intake of a calculated amount of hydration, especially if you are a player, that's always in a good way to ensure you have better performance. So anywhere between those 4 to 7 ml, which we said in the beginning, these are the Olympic guidelines. But to make it simple to an athlete, you don't need to look at 5 ml, calculate. All you need to do is just drink 1 or 2 glasses of water before your game. And as I said, ensure there's some salt in it, because salt is what retains your water. And like you aptly said, I've had athletes who played international, of course, they do play. Thankfully for me, I've dealt with a lot of badminton. So athletes sometimes go on hectic training, say, because I know these players play 3 sessions a day, and there is in between the gym, the fitness. So when they do a 3-hour session, they do not realize that they cannot rely on water alone. and like you said, I overdrank, because they overdrink plain water without realizing that it can be really not favorable for an athlete. It's so important for them to understand the need of electrolytes. And I think that way, definitely Enerzal is a clean product in younger athletes. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need branched chain amino acids. What you really need as a fuel for your training is just water, and water is better absorbed when there's sodium and with some amount of carbohydrates in them. So over drinking per se, when I'm referring to plain water, can lead to dilution of your body water, and that leads to cramping. And that is what also sets off another chain reaction, just the opposite of dehydration. So you have to ensure that you continue taking your electrolyte drink, sports drink, or as simple as your even Enerzal, which is just electrolytes, what is needed, sodium chloride, potassium. And you can look at your, it's also an isotonic drink, which means that many times, I also sometimes know athletes, the biggest mistake they do is when you have, powder form of a mix, they think, more is good. And they make the drink mix in a concentrated form without understanding gastric distress or stomach discomfort, because the stomach can absorb, in the ratio or the percentage as much as only those 6 to 8%. More than that becomes hypertonic, which means that it's too sugary. It's kind of squashing around your stomach. The blood cannot absorb it, and it leads to further nausea or further discomfort. So please follow dilution guidelines. Don't think more is good, more is not good. So you have to follow that. And many times when you're looking at a very intense training session, say beyond 1.5 hours, as these matches can be quite unpredictable, then you look at these multiple glucose carbohydrates or transporters, what we call them, a combination of glucose, dextrose, or your fructose, which is fruit sugar. So they are also, again, better absorbed, and you can take up to 90 grams in the given hour. So those are the latest, research suggestions, so that where the athlete is not feeling nauseated, and because the stomach cannot absorb anything more than 60 grams in a given hour.
Wonderful. Thank you for your for expanding on that. We have a few questions that have come in. How to determine in match nutrition. So basically the question is, are bananas good to have during the match? What tips might you give for nutrition? And I may just add to that, what might be something that a tennis player should carry in their tennis bag? What are the few things that they should have in their tennis bag from a nutrition and hydration standpoint at practice and at matches?
Yes, so this is a very good question, and you do not need anything fancy. I think it's so important to just treat food first approach. So as simple as, I think banana is tried and tested, and I think it's the athlete's first go-to item, because it's so high in carb. A large banana can give anywhere between 23 to 25 grams of carbohydrate. And if you're looking at 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate, you eat about 4-5 dates and you eat 1 banana, you hit your 60-gram target for the hour. But remember that you want to space your carbohydrate, especially if you're playing an intense game. Don't gulp down the whole thing in one shot, because then that can be, uncomfortable for somebody who's not trained, like our professor taught us, train the gut. You train your your stomach to digest that carbohydrate in the peak training season, and you don't emulate or you don't wait to try that on the competition day. So you've been there, you've done that, and you also can reach out to easily digesting, fast absorbing carbohydrates. That could be dates, raisins, it could be a slice of bread, idli, dosa, just before your workout, I mean. And of course, whatever is easy to carry, and definitely carry your sports drink. You can even sip on your protein shake if need be, but small sips at a time, small bites at a time, space it out, and kind of don't rush through the entire portion in one go.
Sure. Great. Another question come in is coffee okay before match, or is it okay and again before training play? How do you what's your guidance on that?
Yes, coffee, thankfully, again, now, if you saw the last slide, from the IOC consensus statement to the AIS Group A evidence-based ergogenic aids, tried and tested and highly effective. You have to also remember there are guidelines. Guidelines also say you can do 120 grams of carbohydrate an hour. What's important is you have to see, can you personalize that for yourself? Just because there are guidelines doesn't mean from paper to practice. I think there's a lot of challenge. You have to be able to try this in your training session, work with your dietitian, your coach, see what works for you, because there are caffeine responders, there are caffeine non-responders. Now, if you're somebody like me who's a caffeine non-responder, instead of the caffeine, which can stimulate your central nervous system and excite you and improve your performance and timing, you are going to be jittery, you're going to have a headache, you'll have palpitations, and you wouldn't want to do that. So you want to time that. So one thing about coffee is black coffee is obviously easy to use, but it's difficult to quantify the amount of caffeine. Now, in down south, we have filter coffee. Now, quite strong. So a strong coffee could give you anywhere between 150 to say 200 mg, and that's over 3 mg per kg body weight of caffeine. So if you do not have gastric distress, meaning any acidity or discomfort, because some guys can have burning sensation in the stomach when you take coffee on an empty stomach. So when we train low or we're looking at athletes for fat burning or other training adaptations, we do suggest caffeine before your workout. So you have to try it and just document that and see what works for you. That way it's easy for you to kind of make progress based on your response.
Great. There's one question on very pertinent, particularly in the Indian context, is your recommendations for vegetarians. Oftentimes even we coaches get questions: is it okay to be vegetarian? Can our children progress in sport on a vegetarian diet? And of course, now you've got some of the top players in the world who are moving to plant-based food. So recommendations on that. Sometimes the concern is the protein aspect. How do I get enough protein if I'm a vegetarian? Any recommendations on foods that they can have before, but then also particularly after, in the recovery phase?
So today, coincidentally, is World Environment Day. So I think with the carbon emission, I think going vegetarian is the only way forward. So vegetarianism is good. I am mostly vegetarian, 99% at home. So vegetarians can be very healthy. You just have to take care that you do your blood parameters, take care of your iron, ferritin, B12, like I mentioned, definitely vitamin D. B12 is available in nutritional yeast if you're vegetarian. If you consume dairy, based on your body composition objectives and goals, you can taper the fat percentage of the milk. Milk is a good source and high quality. So you can look at your paneer, cheese, and dals, nuts, seeds. But you just have to remember that you need larger portion of protein. So I think there are challenges as vegetarians. There is high amount of the whole grains, the pulses, the dark green leafy vegetables have a lot of phytates, oxalates. There's a nutrient interaction, be it iron, calcium. So the absorption of certain very important minerals like your calcium. Again, muscle contraction needs calcium. Your magnesium, a muscle relaxant. Now that's available in your dark green leafy vegetables, seeds, nuts, almonds. So a lot of these important magnesium, zinc. With coronavirus, we're talking so much about zinc as very important. Zinc, selenium to maintain your immunity. Now these are available from your seeds and nuts. just improving some simple things as sprouting your pulses, changing your water at least 3-4 times when you soak the pulses, soaking your nuts, ensuring that you space your milk and your iron-rich food 3 hours apart. Don't drink tea, coffee up to 1 hour after you've eaten your breakfast or your lunch. Simple things as these can improve the absorption of iron, calcium, magnesium. Okay, so just this, and definitely my advice to vegetarians is you can be vegetarian. If you're looking at protein supplements, there are now beautiful dime a dozen options. You can look at pea protein, mixed protein, because pea protein also lacks one amino acid called methionine. It's a bit lower. So combining these two, like a grain base, quinoa and a pea protein. So mixed protein definitely improves the amino acid profile. So you can look at a protein supplement just in case you're falling sick. Personally, I'm not very confident with the soya only because there are some contradictory suggestions. So if you're male, you need the male sexual hormone testosterone, go easy with soya in moderation. So you may definitely want to look at whey, which has higher leucine. Just a scoop will give you 2.5 to 3 grams, and leucine is what increases muscle protein synthesis, especially after strength training. So just kind of play along, and you can work with your dietitian, and then you can lead a very healthy life.
Sure, thank you. And for those questions that we haven't been able to address, if there are some, we will hopefully spend some time after the final topic for all of our panelists, and then we'll try to address some of the questions that are coming in even from the previous topic. But thank you, Geeta. And then maybe as a wrap up, if you'd like to share how our audience could potentially connect with you, if they have further questions, and maybe even gain from your expertise. So.
Thank you. You may either reach me on LinkedIn. I am with the same name, or you already have my email ID. If you have any questions, kindly please send me an email, and I think I'll promise to send out a response.
Sure. And we can share the emails of all of the presenters here with our audience. So we'll try to do that at the end of the session. But thank you for a very informative session on nutrition and hydration, such an important aspect of being an athlete and improving.
Thank you.
Great. So we will transition to our next topic session, which is now on personalized fitness training. And we have with us distinguished fitness trainer, strength and conditioning coach from Delhi, Mr. Vijay Yashpal. Mr. Yashpal has his own company, Live Fit with Vijay, and is training athletes of all different levels, including some of the top professional players in India. He's worked with the likes of Yuki Bamri and also other upcoming players. So we'll get into our next session. Vijayji, if I can, I'm just trying to see, are you on? I'm trying to see your video here.
I can.
Oh,
yeah,
great.
Sure, I can hear you.
Great. So welcome, excited to start this session on this very important aspect that you're bringing to the forefront, which is that to have a successful fitness plan, every athlete's unique needs have to be factored into. You cannot have just a generic solution. You got to understand the unique needs of the athlete, develop the plan, and that's where you're going to get the most success. So you're going to talk about personalized fitness training. And I'd like to ask you, what made you choose this topic, and what is your big picture view on this aspect of personalized fitness training?
Sure. Thank you for, first of all, inviting me as a panelist here. I'm really honored, and I'm really taking it as a great opportunity to share my knowledge and listen to the best, presenters. The idea of choosing personal training in tennis is a major concern for me, since I'm working as a fitness conditioning coach. The reason being, I have been observing for a pretty long time, in our country especially, that personal training has become a trend, for the people to become coaches in no time, and they're really taking quite, important things in their hands. They are playing with the life of basically a life of a player. Now, what is the major concern that I observed is that we we coaches, I mean, the many coaches around, they're working on the method of, one size fitting all kind of a method, like they are treating every specific high performance player with the same method of training. This makes me feel not understand, because every athlete is born different. They have their own adaptability, things that how they adapt to a certain kind of a movement or a training. So it is about bringing awareness among the coaches to stop working across, the rules of the book. What I mean is that, we read books, we go through a lot of certifications, we understand the subject. But what lacks is, how a coach could evolve out of this, bringing their own individual capacity in training an athlete, because when you dig deeper into the books, you're not able to really bring new things in the forefront. So what happens is that, you can imagine, if I have some problem, like you have some problem and we are both eating for the different problems, the same medicine, you can imagine the disaster, how we're going to collapse. So I took this issue to take, personal training in sports. Basically, I should say sports, not just tennis, because I cater to many different athletes around, not just tennis, but I'm usually working with tennis players. So I want to bring in forefront, the right methods of training athletes personally, but with the right methodology, and obviously training them according to their game styles. Because a person who is, aggressive player, he has a different capacity to move around the court, and a person who is a defensive player has a different capacity to move around the court.
Sure.
So the training has to be different according to the ideology a player keeps. And then there are hybrid players, you understand? Who are like a mixture of, attacking players and defensive. So you have to see how you're going to treat that athlete, or what kind of drills you're going to incorporate into the training program that they're able to produce results.
Sure,
so,
sure. And we'll come to the playing styles. But one of the challenges, I suppose, when I'm hearing you talk, one of the things is, particularly at the junior level, let's talk about maybe the foundational level, grassroots level, beginner tennis, then moving into intermediate tennis. A lot of that coaching environment is in groups. So how do we create, a group training, but also have a little bit of that personalization that you're talking about introduced into that? So let's say I'm training a group of 20 kids. How can what are the strategies that you use, and what would be your tips to train that group? Of course, you'll have your training plan, but then also try to personalize it a little bit.
I tell you, I have a good experience of training different level of age groups players in a group when, sometimes when you are working with some association, or you have obviously a scarcity of time and all, So obviously they tend to do almost the same activity, but how do I vary it between loading with the elite players and junior development training in a one platform? Is that the duration, the time duration, the time duration of the activity, and secondly, the number of repetitions, if it is based on the principles of repetitions, so they tend to do more repetitions in that process. So that's how you are able to, inculcate and encourage a different level of age group players in a one platform, and still able to get results from them, And on the top of that, I have an experience, where sometimes, when you're training elite academies, they want a coach to come. Coach has a less time, and they want to put everybody in a one frame. They say, you just come, you train them, how inko train karo. So उसमें क्या होता है कि आपको बहुत ध्यान रखना होता है कि आप जब ट्रेन कर रहे हो, आपके पैरामीटर्स एज ग्रुप के हिसाब से मैटर करने चाहिए. Obviously, it's not really easy to cater to different age groups in a one group and then train them, because everybody is eventually looking for results and performance. So this is one of the best methods, where you increase the time duration for elite and, manage the duration of the junior development player, and respectively the intermediates and all, and then increase the repetition range. And also the length of the grid. Suppose if somebody is working on a 2 meter distance side to side movement, an elite athlete who has a bigger footwork, one crossover, he's just going to reach there in no time. So, the grid size is being increased and the repetitions are increased. And obviously the sets are increased. Suppose intermediate player is doing 2 sets, junior development maybe 4, elite player, advanced player will be probably doing 5 or 6 with increased number of reps along and the duration time.
So managing the intensity, the duration of the training is one way to gradually progress players from
Absolutely.
the foundation level to a higher level. What are some fitness characteristics? Let's say there's a player who's 7, 8 years old, right? Let's start from that first stage of tennis. And then we'll kind of move up our way into professional tennis. We'll get there. But let's start from that foundational, 7, 8 years old starting tennis. By the time they're 10, 11, 12, what would you suggest those 4, 5 years, what should they develop athletically? And what do you look for when you get a player who's 12, 13?
The best way, because I tell you, one of the athletes, Neeraj Yashpal, who's now doing pretty well in the Indian circuit, a left-hander. I have trained him. He's at the same time, he's my nephew also, and one of the top players, doing very good and as a benchmark in fitness around the country. I started training him when he was 4 years old, and but he was a little bit gifted in the initial stage itself, that he was keen to do whatever you give him. So I start from him. I started introducing, simple plain hand-eye coordination, simple drills. That's just simply making play with the ball, where you understand how he anticipates, how does he understand the movement of the ball? Is he able to understand the trajectory of the ball? Because when I started training him, it was in mind that we want to develop him into a professional player, because that's how we started thinking around, So he started adapting to that principle of hand-eye coordination. We could see that he's starting well with the reflex character of the training and all that stuff. Then slowly started introducing, very basic core training exercises, which are dynamic rotational exercises like trunk twisters and all, which many players are now getting introduced in a very advanced stage, which I started working with him on at that stage. So then it is about training them in a relay method, where a drill can be created more competitive, and then create 1 or 2 players together and then give them a kind of a relay drill where they are competing against certain set drill, where they have plyometrics involved, they have juggling involved, a little bit of balancing on the beam. So likewise, in where they understand the foot control, where they're able to work across the ankle mobility, being unaware, because this is something you can't teach a kid ki hum aapki ankle mobility ko improve kar rahe hain. This is something we have to make him enjoy the journey. And then slowly he started to, by the time he was 5 and 6 year old, he started to work across freehand push-ups. Obviously he was good at that time to take up. And then started to work across little pull-ups, in order to help him work across the latissimus dorsi, work on the rotators and increase the length. And also afterwards, he, please.
Yeah, so sorry to there, but so this is all happening. So you mentioned hand-eye coordination at the start, some agility work. You mentioned some core exercises that you started introducing. So this is all in the under 10 phase. And then you got into some free weight exercises as Neeraj was getting about 10, 11. Am I following correctly?
Yeah.
What did you do after that initial phase, once he got into, let's say, 11, 12, maybe his teenage years? How did that training progress from there?
The training progressed very quickly from there, because he started to do pretty well with the body weight training. He was started to doing good pull-ups, and he started to gain a little height, and his reflexes were going through very well. So he got into, kinetic training. I started introducing him to the bands, working across with the Thera band, with the Thera tube, with the loop band training, mini bands. And at the early stage only, I started working on the exercises with him, which usually, as I see as a coach, I still have many advanced players coming down working on basically the basic aspects of the training. They never work during the nurturing years, and that ingredient still affects them during the circuits where they're playing, all over, playing senior tournaments and all, it's affecting them. So I help him work across with the TheraBand TheraTube and freehand body weight training exercises, some isokinetic and isometric movements. But a lot of things are introduced with him, which is mobility training, a lot of flexibility, and at the same time, quick agility routines, especially based on the principles of unplanned agility, So I used to take him for the anticipation drills, unplanned agility, where he doesn't know what movement I'm going to ask him to do. So he works through a lot of numbers and club drill, which I devised for him, where he has to use his head a lot while he's doing physical, because, it's about the mind and the body control. It has to be in place. Tennis works on brain, So it helped him understand the aspects of the tennis at a very young age, and he was able to compete with the seniors by the time he was 13 and 14. And by 15, he was winning the men's tournament, because the training helped him initiate these practices into the actual, scenario.
Yeah. So, it's an interesting point. You mentioned the development of both the physical and cognitive, or the mental training, because in tennis, you're seeing the ball and moving. You're not just moving.
Exactly.
You've got to see the ball. You've got to, in your peripheral vision, also know where the opponent is and what shot you're going to play. So you've got to have that mind synced with the body to get to the ball and play the right shot. So, so we talked about that initial base. Then we progressed to his intermediate phase, where you started making Neeraj, and we're talking about Neeraj Yashpal here, who is a professional player now. But as an example of what a junior player can go through the journey to develop his or her fitness. So in the intermediate phase, then you started to introduce some resistance training, free weight, some TheraBands. You mentioned some more agility, speed, and also starting to introduce a little bit more of that mental, decision making.
Sorry. I missed one very important part that the audience, if it's hearing me out, I want to tell them across. Training with the medicine ball is one of the most important components for a tennis player, because tennis works across the principles of rotational burst, So sometimes you introduce plyometrics, the core plyometric, that is the medicine ball shows, all at a very late stage. I mean, almost after 14 years or something, because you say, 3 kilo ki ball hai, 4 ki hai, abhi movement nahi hai. And the sad part, I tell you, Harsh, is the incorrective method of doing plyometric. I mean, the medicine ball shows, Tennis is based on the principles of ground force, It is important to how to maintain a ground clearance, create a ground clearance. I mean, it works on high as well as low ground clearance. So most often, if आज की डेट में अगर हम अपने प्लेयर्स को देखते हैं, इंडिया में किसी भी अच्छे प्लेयर को देख लो, I can completely challenge that. Very rarely few players have the ability to really bend deeper and reach for the ball. They're usually 3, 4, 5 ball rally and they're done. I mean, because I've seen that with my eyes. So it's very important for being a fitness coach. I want to emphasize, if other coaches hearing me out or parents, they should also watch out कि जो उनके प्लेयर्स हैं जो प्रोफेशनल खेल रहे हैं वो लो ग्राउंड क्लियरेंस स्किल्स के ऊपर में मेजरली काम कर रहे हैं. They learn to bend low on the ball so that they understand the trajectory of the ball and get the ball early. And this will help them when they travel abroad to Europe or somewhere, probably if they go to Turkey and all. I mean, the surface is so slow that you will die on the court if you train with no ground clearance here, because your legs will just give off and you would lose all the tempo and energy. So it's important to work on those principles of low ground clearance and introduce a lot of rotational burst exercises.
Sure.
And I can guarantee you, the players will be flying high,
Sure. So medicine ball training करते वक्त, it's important to bend your knees. हम बोलते हैं tennis court पे bend your knees, stay low to the ground. ये नहीं कि आप खड़े-खड़े medicine ball throw कर रहे हो, but you're bending your knees, you're getting the rotation, and then you release, you're using your full body. And I think this is very important. Now let's focus on that phase when the player gets to about 16, 17, 18 years of age. They're coming to the end of their junior career, and now they're going into senior circuit. They're making a transition. The game changes very fast. It becomes much more physical as you start going. What should the training be in that transition phase? How are you training your players to get them ready for, whether it's college tennis in America or whether it's, the senior circuit? How are you getting them ready for that next level, from junior tennis to the next level up?
Very interesting question you asked me. I was on the same page. This is a very important thing for the athletes when they reach 18 or 16 or 17 to start working on the principles of hypertrophy, to start working on building the muscle mass, because this is where the hormonal changes are at its peak and all that, and that in the growing phase. And many mood swings also are there. So what happens if you keep them, stick to a very basic training, which is journal training. Not really focusing on lifting the weight, not really focusing on, working on the stabilization of the core, not really working on the power burst training exercises. It is the right time to introduce some Olympic lifting into the face with the athlete. But again, I must stress this. It's not important that by introducing these training applications, an athlete would become an athlete or a best player. There's many norms and methods that you can drill your athlete to bring into the top level of athleticism. So I personally I would say that Olympic lifting should be introduced, where they start working on the bench press, some deadlift, some push and press, clean and jerk. And on the same time, they should majorly focus on unilateral training and contralateral training methods, where the balancing of the body plays a major role. Tennis is a sport which is working on the principle of contralateral and unilateral methods. It is nothing which it is also ipsilateral. You train certain strokes, you play in that frame also. Now, majorly, I should say, a major focus is to be emphasized on the core build-up, the strength of the abdominis, the lower back. They have to start working on the hip opening exercises. They should strengthen a lot across the hamstrings and the iliotibial band, that is the IT band, the adductors, and the major twist is that is the hip flexors, what happens is that usually now, as we started off initially about personal training, why I choose this, because most of the top players in a country are training on the same principles, are training same. Unfortunately, the trainers, though they've been educated, but they don't like to use their innovation, their expertise, and they're not ready to explore new methods of training. And the results come out as zero, to be honest, because result is what they are usually injured, and they are seeing physiotherapists for rehabilitation and all that stuff. So I should emphasize, please introduce a lot of core training, Olympic lifting with them, training with the weights, and it should be a functional training. We should, engage a little bit of CrossFit training methodology also, along with the high intensity interval training to improve the anaerobic capacity of the body. Because tennis is, of course, aerobic, but it is more anaerobic. A point starts, a shortest point lasts, 10 seconds, and you have to be ready, and maybe sometimes it lasts 40 seconds or a minute, and you have to be immediately ready to play the same amount of, rallies on the court. So this is what I should say.
Sure. And then when the players get to that highest level, higher levels where they're competing a lot, and we talked about this long season in tennis. One question comes up, and I know I had it as a player too, is what should I be doing during tournaments? And so how do you work with players on that individualized plan to, when they're with you, they're training, but then when they go for their tournament circuit, how do you provide them that personalized plan, and what should players be doing during tournament play? Sometimes I feel, we can overtrain. We're playing matches too. We're trying to do our lifts too. We're trying to keep our fitness going. What is the right balance? How do you figure that out uniquely with each player?
Very beautiful when you ask, what I am, to be honest, I don't know, there may be many coaches who may not agree with my ideology, but I've had a huge success rate following this ideology of, when my players travel abroad, their training never stops, It's not that they are in Germany or they're playing in Russia, they're playing in London, or probably they're playing in Hong Kong, Bangkok, wherever, in the country. The training stays the same. Because I tell you what, because why I make sure that it stays the same when they're traveling, they are going out to play a tournament. It's nothing different that they're going to go and do there, except for the climate, the atmosphere and the climate. When they are in the country, for the training with me, वो मेरे साथ 2 घंटे ट्रेन कर रहे हैं, उनकी 4 घंटे टेनिस रिगरस प्रैक्टिस हो रही है, उनकी रिहैबिलिटेशन ट्रेनिंग भी हो रही है, उनके अपने रिचुअल्स भी हैं जो उनको फॉलो कर रहे हैं, और उसके बाद वो फिर सर्किट खेलने के लिए जाते हैं. सर्किट में जाने के बाद मैं उन लोगों को एम्फसाइज करता हूँ कि अपनी ट्रेनिंग में कोई ढील ना करें. हाँ, जो चीजों को हम बहुत ध्यान रखते हैं वो हमारी होती है कि हम ओवर ट्रेनिंग के मूड को नहीं पकड़ के एक स्टेबल प्लेटफॉर्म पे रहते हैं, जिसमें कि हमारी ड्यूरेशन शॉर्ट रहती है पर इंटेंसिटी हार्ड रहती है. आई मीन अगर हम 1-1.5 घंटा ट्रेन करते हैं तो उनकी ट्रेनिंग स्प्लिट हो जाती है कि हाफ एन आवर मॉर्निंग रूटीन है, हाफ एन आवर की इवनिंग में है, पर वो ट्रेनिंग जो है वो इवनिंग वाली जो ट्रेनिंग है इट इज मोर बेस्ड ऑन स्टेबिलिटी एंड कोर बिल्डअप, और मॉर्निंग वाली है इट इज इम्पैक्टफुल नाइस हार्डकोर ट्रेनिंग. और उसके अंदर में I make use of lots of plyometric medicine ball throws as I just expressed. क्योंकि टेनिस में जब आप जाते हो you use a lot of ground force and rotational burst both use होता है.
Right.
तो उनकी ट्रेनिंग में मैं मेडिसिन बॉल को बहुत एम्फसाइज करता हूँ कि जब आप ट्रैवल भी कर रहे हो, चाहे अपने साथ आप 2 किलो की बॉल ले जाओ, अगर नहीं है तो आप स्टैंड बैग यूज कर लो, कहीं से अरेंज करो, बट यू शुड वर्क. So they work a lot on rotational exercises with the TheraBands and with the medicine ball exercises, and they work a lot on stability of the core.
Wonderful. So so they have a plan when they're traveling for tournaments too. They're traveling with
Absolutely.
some simple equipment ke saath, and they're doing the exercises. Very good.
Absolutely.
We'll open it up to the audience. We have a few more minutes. If there are any questions from the audience, please send it across via the chat, or if you'd like to come on audio too, that's fine. Any questions for Vijay ji on personalized fitness training, developing your fitness? Maybe while the audience sends their questions in, I do have one more question. And sometimes I hear this in the Indian context that Indian players, how can we get the fitness up to international levels? What are you seeing from your perspective, and what are some ways that Indian players can improve their fitness, get to that international level of play? This is more of a high performance question, but I think it will help those players who are trying to get to that international level. What should their fitness level be to compete against the best in the world?
The first thing that I should emphasize is the key is discipline, and having belief in their efficiency. And they should have a very strong system and backup of training where they have a thoroughbred coach who knows his job well, taking care of their, periodization, training periodization, loading phases, and also the training program should have a lot of creative blend to it. I mean, it should incorporate all the different areas of fitness where they're really challenging their body quite a lot. Now what happens is that if we compare ourselves with the international waters, the players down playing internationally, what differs us from them is basically majorly the discipline and belief in the system. Here we like to change the coach by the time 1-2 mahine hue unka performance nahi aaya, they lose the faith, they have no patience, they move to the next destination, new coach. And I mean, in that process, what happens, they lose a major time of development. So I personally believe that this is what I advise, is that they should be very, very disciplined. They should sleep on time, they should wake up on time, they should have a set system, and they should have rituals. The rituals I'm talking about, I work on the principles of rituals with my athletes. मेरे जितने भी athletes मेरे साथ जुड़े हैं, everybody wakes up good early in the morning. They have their dedicated half an hour on the meditation, deep breathing exercises. Then they have their breakfast when they're going off for the tennis. They have a strict system of strict 30 minutes of warm up where they incorporate hip opening, thoracic spine opening exercises. along with the general dynamic warm-up exercise, then they play tennis. They have a dedicated system of cool down and releasing to recuperate and be ready for the evening session. And then they have a dedicated 1.5-hour session, which is monitored, where they train on the intensifications of, different movements for what type of set schedule they have. So, I mean, it's not that we in India now, lots of good players are following a very dedicated routine and they're doing remarkably very well. But it's still we need to evolve, I mean, to match those standards. And I basically say discipline is the only simple thing that we need to bring in our system.
Great, great. Wonderful. We have a couple minutes left. There's some questions that have come in, Vijayji. When is playing multiple sports in young age important from your perspective?
It's absolutely important. And I should say a player, if is able to play different sports, he must play, because every sport teaches you something, I mean, if you see Rafa Nadal has been a footballer, so you can see his footwork, you can see the reach that he really generates and the amount of bending he uses, and also the ground force for his serve. So if an athlete is able to play cricket, tennis, football, we should not stop them, because it is very tough to establish which sport a kid is going to play, because eventually he likes to play. So he usually likes a sport either ways, But it takes a little while, maybe 5 years, 6, 7 years, where you start understanding which sport a kid likes, and then you put that kid into the special,
Sure.
area of his choice.
Great, great. We'll go for maybe one more question, and then we can at the end of the session spend some more time if our presenters are able to stay. We can spend some more time addressing some questions that we haven't been able to get to. But there's one that says, what is the right age to start training, strength training, like with barbells and dumbbells? What would you say is the right age to start that kind of weight training with some weights?
Again, it depends on genetics and the height a kid has taken off, I mean, sometimes a kid is 14 and still not gain good height and all this stuff. But eventually, if I tell you, 10 to 12 years is a good age to start with the barbells and dumbbells, provided a coach knows that what kind of movements to be initiated in the training, because there are certain movements to be taken care of that doesn't work across the spinal column. And, it's not that हम अपने shoulder के ऊपर अपने weights नहीं उठा सकते, but what again matters most, if I come down to technique, the technique has to be very, very, polished, so that, a kid the growth is not hampered with. So 12 years or 10 years can be done, but I personally advise to at least wait till 13, maximum 13, and then you can just put the kid into the weight training, can start working with the deadlift and everything then.
Sure. And one question on the pandemic with the children at, players at all ages at home and unable to, be training as they would normally do. What would you suggest to do at home? How can they keep up with their fitness levels at home?
Presently, I'm training a lot of athletes online because of the pandemic, and I'm mostly all the time busy throughout the day. I'm doing more work than the actual offline days. It's tough. It's tough to manage fitness during the pandemic because of the mood swings and the mental pressure and the stress it's giving to the people. Tennis, fitness evolves. It evolves in an atmosphere of peace, where there is no stress and all that stuff. So it's important for the people who are actually been training before and they are not really training now. They should start working on the freehand training, and if they have accessories like TheraBand or TheraTubes and everything. But as of now, since the physical activity is negligible, people are more lazing around and more watching TV and not really doing much, eating a lot. I personally insist that they should start working a lot on the pranayama, for the breath control exercises. And they should emphasize a lot on yoga. I would rather say, start working a lot on the yoga asanas, and you can really go through, Google it or watch on the YouTube. There are many challenges that can really help you with that. So majorly, I should say yoga and work on the breathing exercise.
Wonderful. There are a few more. There's one more question which we'll get to after the next session on the scientific nature of fitness. But if people were to want to connect with you, how should they do so to learn more and to maybe get your advice?
We can share the number with them via mail, or probably I have my WhatsApp page, Instagram page with the Live Fit with Vijay. They can direct message me there. They can get in touch with me. I can leave my email, which is very simple, fitnessvijay@yahoo.com. They can directly get in touch, and they feel free. I'll try my best to cater to their questions.
Great. And we can see the Live Fit with Vijay in the background. It's nice logo. So
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for an excellent session on fitness. Very much appreciate your expertise and time. Thank you, Vijayji. We'll now transition to our next and final topic session, and I'll be presenting. So we'll share my screen here. So I hope everyone is enjoying their session so far. My name is Harsh Mankad. I'm the founder and head coach of Tenicity's tennis program. We are based here in the US, in Minnesota, and it's an upcoming tennis program. We are growing our very strong foundation at the beginner level and growing partnerships with schools, with cities, and really trying to promote the game. And I believe that much of our success in participation, in growth, in expanding the game is a result of the positive tennis culture that we are striving to create. And I feel very passionate about this, and I'm looking forward to present on this culture. So the first aspect is what is a positive tennis culture? Because it could mean different things to different people. So I'd like to show you a picture, because pictures often speak louder than words. And if you look at this picture and you ask yourself, what do you see? And so this is a camp that we did in Chandigarh in 2019. I'm working with a group of players. They are our beginner players, most of them under 10. But you can see that they are smiling. They've got their thumbs up. They are happy to be on the court. And us coaches, we are with them together and creating an environment that hopefully helps them to fall in love with the game and play this game their whole life. So to me, a positive culture recognizes, firstly, above all else, that through sport, through tennis, we are improving people's lives, that our platform as coaches, as providers of tennis, really is much larger than tennis. So we have to think big picture and focus on participation growth. How can we grow the game? How can we get more players playing, enjoying the game, and hopefully playing the game and benefiting from it their whole life? I think this perspective fundamentally is what creates that positive culture. A positive culture also focuses on training their coaches, because ultimately it's the coaches that are interacting with the players. They're going to create the experience. So as much as we can, working with the coaches that work in our programs, developing them, training them, is going to move that culture forward, is going to create that positive environment. And then trying to make tennis fun. My grandfather, Mr. George Vasant, who was a Davis Cup player for India and a senior coach, and he would say that most importantly, make it fun. If you make it fun, the children will come back. So we always have to keep that in mind as coaches. Sometimes we are working on the technicalities, on the lesson plans, and it gets complex. But ultimately, it's about making the game fun. And at all levels, even if you're a high performance player, you're having fun, you're enjoying the process, you're going to want to play and keep moving forward. Supporting and encouraging all players. not just the ones who are showing talent through their performance or the ones that are, moving up, but all players at all levels. They are there, they are playing, they're trying their best, and a positive culture supports them and encourages them. If they play the shot, maybe they miss the shot, that's okay. Come on, let's try the next shot. So this global view on supporting and encouraging all players, and finally emphasizing play, fun, learning and development over results, particularly in the younger years, trying to get the children involved in just enjoying the process, as I said, not getting so stressed about results, and also educating parents as best as you can, also working with them to try to go into more of the playing and learning. And I think these are the elements that encompass a positive culture. And then you get the result that you see in the picture is the children smiling and enjoying their time on the court. So as we define what is a positive culture, the next aspect becomes, why is the culture important? And to me, a positive culture is at the very center of a tennis system, of a tennis program. It impacts everything. And so if you look at the top year participation growth, one of the things we're seeing in our program here, we tied up with the school. And before we started, the school had a small program. But within the first season itself, we were able to grow it, and we had almost 200 players participate in the program. So that was tremendous participation growth. I think the positive culture had a big reason for it. Players were enjoying their time on the court. They were feeling supported. They wanted to play more. They started to bring their friends. We got positive feedback and word of mouth. So I think that was a big reason. And as we think about growing the game and getting more players involved, getting the culture right is key. If we look at physical activity, a program that gets players active and moving and enjoying is going to get the players more physically active, and they're going to benefit from that in their health and wellness. We know that physical activity is so important for a healthy life. And now, particularly in the pandemic, this is one area that has been impacted. A lot of kids, a lot of players of all ages have lost their routine of playing. They're not in structured tennis anymore. So we have to think about, as we get back from the pandemic, how we can get our players back into a supportive environment, get them active again. And by doing so, we are going to help them and improve their life, improve their immunity, all these things that have come to the forefront in the pandemic. If we think of the overall development of the athletes, a positive culture that facilitates friendships during tennis, it's inviting, it's inclusive, where players come and they work in teams. We ask our players to introduce themselves to your partner, learn their name, get to know somebody new. You work together in a team to achieve a goal. This helps them to develop their social skills. And if we think about the emotional learning, the relationships they're building, they learn to be respectful of everybody in the program. They learn how to win, how to lose, and go through all of the emotions that the sport teaches. So we're also helping and enhancing their emotional learning. And then cognitive or mental training, a positive culture that supports players to have freedom on the court, be creative, make your decision. Tennis is a game of decision making. And so supporting players through that process, getting them to problem solve, use their mind, all of these aspects helps them also to develop cognitively. So an overall development of the athlete beyond the tennis skills in really these life skills can all be enhanced with the culture. And then if we think of high performance, players who are playing at the national level, those that are competing at the international level, a positive culture where they are supporting each other. There is a sense of camaraderie. They are motivating each other to higher levels. They feel like the system is supporting them and not that they are just by themselves trying to figure it out. I think this is one area particularly in the Indian context, unfortunately, a lot of our top players feel like they're alone. They are having to navigate this very complex road of tennis by themselves. And so having more of a system behind them, supporting them, encouraging them, even if their performance for a while is not at that level, but believing in them, I think can help our high performance players reach a whole new level. So you can see that for these reasons, for the participation growth, for impacting people's lives in a very meaningful way, and for also moving our high performance players forward, a positive culture is so important. And one big idea that I'd like to leave you with is from this slide is a positive tennis culture improves the quality of life of each participant in the program. You're impacting every player, whether they're a beginner, they're a high performance player, they're feeling the experience of this culture, and you're also driving benefits to society at large. When you're improving the health and wellness of your players, when you're helping them to develop life skills, you're helping all of society. So for these reasons, again, I feel that working on the culture and focusing on it can have a very big impact. So the next question becomes, how do we create a positive tennis culture? And I'll talk about a few aspects that go into it that we work on. One is the focus on participation. And one of the things we are doing here in the US is trying to bring our programs closer to where the kids are. So our tie-ups with the school, our tie-up with the city helps to provide that program in the neighborhoods where the children already are. It's easy for them to travel to. They don't have to travel long distances. This makes it also more affordable, right? When you're not having to spend so much time or money in traveling. At our foundation level, our programs, we try to make them more affordable. Sometimes cost is a major barrier to participation. And then using simple equipment and also providing rackets, which oftentimes can be a barrier to participation. And this is where our state federations, national federations can help too. But anyway, you can make tennis more accessible, closer to where the players are, at an affordable price. Helping them with equipment will help grow your participation. Next aspect is training coaches. And one aspect I look at when I'm identifying coaches to work in our program is what is their passion and interest in tennis. And importantly, how passionate are they in sharing that love for the game with others? Because as a coach, it's all about how you are developing others. So I would recommend looking for these qualities as you're looking to build your coaching team, providing the coaches with curriculum and curriculum training, working with them on lesson plans, doing on-court training. We do simulations with our coaches where we role play, we give them feedback. This helps the younger coaches or coaches of all levels really keep improving. So this global feedback is an important aspect because every coach can learn and improve. And creating those opportunities for learning and development, providing coaches with growth opportunities, maybe a little more leadership in their on-court coaching, opportunities to go through more courses. Anything you can do to develop your coaches is going to move the positive culture forward. The next aspect is making it fun, keeping the kids active and playing, trying to avoid big lines, waiting around, really getting them moving. They enjoy that, and then appropriately challenging each player. This is tied to the lesson plans. And so if you have a group of players playing, there will be different levels. And so you've got to make sure you're tailoring that activity to the level of the player. If it's too easy, the players are going to get bored. If it's too difficult, it starts to get frustrating. So that's where you've got to, through your planning, through your expertise, find the right challenge level, and then supporting, encouraging, respecting, and motivating each player. And that's what will make it a lot of fun for your participants. Create collaborative and team-based play. So we do a lot of partner-based, team-based activities, and junior players really enjoy that. Even the adult players will like working on teams facilitate social interaction and teamwork, as I talked, introducing yourself to your partner, trying to get that social environment going. I think that will help the players improve their tennis skills, motivate each other, but also be developing the life skills. And then in terms of tournament play, creating some more round robin formats over single elimination. And I'll have a slide here to talk more on this, but this helps players of all ages get more match play in and gives them that experience versus sometimes single elimination, which tends to provide more opportunity to the players who are at a higher level. And then trying de-emphasizing results in early years, promoting sports play. As Vijayji said, from a fitness standpoint, encouraging a lot of sports play, developing the general fitness base, and not pushing players too early into specialization or focusing too much on results-based place finish. Whether they won or lost, that's okay. But more importantly, they're playing sports and they're building their general fitness. If you look at the Soviet system, I recently read about their system of developing their athletes. They too promote a lot of general fitness adaptation or training in those foundation years where the athletes are playing a lot of sports. And so I think that's important, recognizing players' efforts over those that are just winning. So making sure that we are appreciative that players are coming, they're trying, recognizing and rewarding participation over results. So as much as we can bring players into the process, and as coaches, as providers of tennis, help the whole system to focus more on playing and effort, I think we will create a much more positive tennis culture versus one where there's a heavy emphasis on trying to win or trying to reach a certain level, particularly again at those foundation years. So if you can incorporate these aspects, I think that really helps build and push forward the positive tennis culture. So here is a slide of focused on junior tennis, but talking about delivering through a positive culture what kids enjoy. And so if you look here on the left, kids love to play and participate. They want to play. They don't enjoy so much being judged. Why did you lose the match is a question that maybe can be avoided. A better question is, okay, you played, great. How was the experience? What did you learn? It helps them to go more into the fact that they played and then making it fun. They enjoy when it's fun, not when there is pressure to win, right? And so trying to create the environment where kids are having fun, and then kids love to learn and to be challenged appropriately. I talked about that. So finding the right balance there, not pushing them to do things, but really making it challenging where they are themselves engaged. They love being in teams and creating that social environment. And then I mentioned creating a supportive, encouraging, motivating, and respectful environment for all participants. And if we can deliver this experience, more players will play the sport. They'll stay in the sport. They'll want to play more. They'll bring their friends. And that's when the sport will grow. And so I think we need to look at this closely. The next aspect is providing equal play time. And so I've created a comparison here between match play, a collaborative format like a round robin or group format, versus a competitive format like a single elimination format. And when I was growing up in India, I played a lot of my junior tennis. Almost all of it was competitive, where one player would win and move on, and the next player, that was the end of the road for them. And I feel that having more collaborative play, finding a better balance, would provide more players with more number of matches. It would give the opportunity to more players to play more. Because at junior levels, we know that talent is not the only criteria why players are winning. Sometimes I get asked by parents, does my child have the talent? Are they going to? And to me, that question is somewhat peripheral. What's more important is that we provide the opportunity for them to play. There may be some players who have started many years before, and that's why they are winning. It could be that they're able to put more time into tennis. So there are many factors that go into results, particularly at those younger years. And so I think if we can also provide more matches for the whole group, we can help raise the entire level of play, but more importantly, provide an experience for all players where they get to play more. In a competitive format, for example, I mentioned 50% of the players only get one match. In a collaborative format, recognizing, again, players for their participation, that can help motivate the players versus typically only the two finalists who receive trophies or prizes. Can we recognize all the players and make all the players and encourage all the players? The fact that they're playing, they're playing matches, trying to encourage all of them versus just those that are winning. And this also, a collaborative format can help reduce the stress of results-based finish. A lot of times players are feeling this stress of competition, and it's coming from themselves, it's coming from the parents, maybe from the coaches, and oftentimes that really takes away from the experience, and maybe they shy away from the sport. So trying to find a better balance, and whether you win or lose, if you're playing another match, if everyone is guaranteed 2 or 3 matches in the tournament, that helps them to move on. In one way, it teaches them how to win and lose and then move on to the next match. And then they're not so stressed about whether they won or lost. And I feel that collaborative formats help players make friends, have fun, versus feeling like they have opponents who they're expected to beat. So very different scenarios. And if we can make tennis more fun, and where they are playing, they're competing, they're still trying their best, they're still trying to win the point, win the match, but they're doing so in a way that has less of these expectations on trying to beat someone. I think we can create a more positive environment. We can also help players play more freely. This is an important point from a mental aspect too. When we hear the top players in the world speaking after the match, for example, Federer sometimes will say, if he's asked, you played very well today. Yes, I did. I felt very free. I played freely. And this is the experience that many players have, even at the highest level. When I think of the matches that I played and I played well, I was playing freely. I was hitting my strokes. And so can we create that environment at the foundation age for children to learn how to play freely? And they'll play freely when there is less stress, when there is less expectation on the results. If you create an environment where they can just go into the playing, I think they're also going to develop those skills that can come in handy when they are competitive players. So again, I'm not saying that we should do away with competition. I think competitive environments are there and serve a purpose, and we all have to go through that. But the question is, can we find a better balance? Can we introduce more collaborative formats so more children can play matches, they can develop their skills, and they can do so with less pressure? I think that will grow the sport, that will raise the standard of play, and everybody will be a winner as a result of that. So next steps for programs in terms of assessing your program on your positive culture. Look at your participation growth. How are you doing on this? Are there opportunities to bring your services, your programs closer to where the players are? Can you help them with equipment? Can there be support from the state, national level to bring down these barriers of accessibility, costs, and help grow the sport? Look at your coach training. Are you putting in enough time, resources into training your coaches? How are you hiring them? How are you developing them? That is going to be key in terms of delivering the program that you want to deliver. Is your program a fun experience? Are those coming to your program enjoying their experience? Is there equal play time and partner-based, team-based play as well in your experience, so that players of all levels are getting enough repetitions in training, they're able to develop their strokes. In matches, they're able to keep getting that experience of match play. And finally, how supportive and encouraging is your environment? Or is it one where players and families are feeling too much pressure? And so if you look at these areas, it can give you a roadmap of where you can focus and develop your program and move your culture forward. And here again is a picture that I'd like to present. Here is at the end of our camp in Chandigarh, and you can see again that our players are smiling. They've had a positive experience. They have learned, they have developed their skills. They've been inspired to keep training and reaching the next level. But more importantly, they've all had a positive experience. And so these are the aspects that I believe we can deliver. And the big idea here is that nurture your positive tennis culture each day. Every day, as a coach, as a program organizer, is an opportunity to move your culture forward, to keep driving a positive experience for all of your participants. And some resources and my contact information, but the Aspen Institute's Project Play website is a wonderful resource. They have research-based reports on the state of play in youth athletics, training for coaches on how to coach kids, and also excellent guidelines for parents of young athletes. And I would encourage you to learn more about their initiative and gain from all of the information and knowledge that they are sharing with the entire sports community to make sports a more positive experience for athletes and develop not only their sports skills, but them as human beings, as contributors, as leaders in society. And that's an important aspect, I believe, of my role as a tennis coach and a program leader. And I feel it's an opportunity for all of us involved in sport. And then I invite you to follow me, my company, on our website, tenicity.com, and then on Facebook, YouTube. I regularly post interviews that I do, instructional content, so you can follow me there. And I've also added my email. So if you have further questions or like to stay in touch, I'd be happy to engage and see how I can help. So with that, I'd like to open up to our Q&A. Thank you for watching my presentation. Great. So Prasang, thank you for your comments and thanks for joining us. That you say the theme of positive tennis culture needs to be propagated more. And it's important as anything else. I couldn't agree more with you that we really need to do whatever we can to help everyone involved in tennis understand that this is a sport for life, that, sorry. Yeah, I was saying that I think there was an interruption with my video, but we should do everything we can to create this environment where children and all players are playing the sport. They're trying to do their best, but they're also understanding that it's a sport for life. There's so many benefits from it. And so even if you lost the match, it's okay. In the big picture, you're playing, you're benefiting, you're moving forward, and your life is improving as a result. And you say, when your tennis ecosystem is healthy, everyone benefits. And yeah, I appreciate your comments on that, Prasang. Any other comments or questions on this aspect of a positive tennis culture, a healthy tennis culture that we can create? And I would continue to mention that post-pandemic, given the situation, I think this is going to be an important aspect as athletes, as sports re-emerges, starts gradually, how best we can, this in one way is a great time to reflect. And all of the experts have presented on the different topics, but right now is an ideal time to reflect, to learn, to share ideas, and to see how best we can move forward and emerge stronger, which was the theme of this event, once we get back to sports in the country. But appreciate everybody for joining us. If the expert panel is willing to stay for a few more minutes, we can open it up to overall questions from everyone. And so let's do that for a few more minutes. And we appreciate all the comments coming in. It's our pleasure to do the webinar. We're happy to learn that you've enjoyed it. If there's feedback, please be willing to share it via text, or you can also come on video and audio and share your feedback. But we appreciate all the feedback that we're getting, and we're glad to hear that you have felt value from these presentations. Thank you very much.
Harsh, can I speak?
Yes. Oh, my mother Nirupama Mankat is on the call. So thanks for joining us. She's one of our top female tennis players of all time. So what a great pleasure for all of us to have you on the call. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you're on the call, but please go ahead.
I just have few lines that when the children come, make them enjoy. The more they enjoy, the more they'll come. The more they come, the better they will improve. And as they keep improving, they can go to higher levels. And that's how then the whole pyramid goes. So first, small children, when they come, help them to enjoy the game. That's what my father used to say. Done.
That's right. I remember for me, my Nanaji, we used to call him, and that's exactly right. And so thanks for sharing, Mummy, on that. The more we can make it fun, they'll enjoy, they'll come, and organically through the group, there will be those children that will keep progressing. And from that, some of them will play competitive tennis. Others will hopefully stay with tennis and play it their whole life. And that will be a big part of their life and keep helping them to gain from it.
Thank you.
Gaurav sir, I think there was one question that we didn't quite get to in your topic, but what if you can explain a little bit more on the differences between Talent Series, Championship Series, and Super Series?
Actually, Talent Series is a junior series. That's for starter players, or you get less points for participating or winning Talent Series. Further segregation is TS3, TS7. The next is Champion Series. Champion Series, you can participate when you have more number of points. Even you get more points when you win Champion Series. The system goes right away like this. First is Talent Series, Champion Series, Super Series, then is National Series, and there are 2 nationals in a calendar.
Okay. Thank you, Gaurav sir, for explaining the differences between those events. Vijayji, there's a question for you on the scientific nature of fitness. Can you explain a little bit more of the science? And maybe Geeta, you can also add into that the science of sports nutrition, getting a little bit more scientific on fitness training and nutrition, how to go about that, and the benefits of that approach.
Yeah, hi Harsh. Yes, can you just repeat your question again?
The question is that to explain the science of fitness. So there's one, you're doing fitness, you're running, you come to the tennis court, you're playing, you're doing some exercises, you've spent some time doing some fitness, you're doing that. The other is that there is a scientific plan, that there are certain things that are being measured, are being evaluated, and that is ongoing so that you can understand where you are today and where, are you progressing or are you actually, regressing? And unless you measure, you really don't know. So bringing that scientific approach in your training from a fitness standpoint, we'll start with you, Vijayji, and then we'll move to Geeta as well to address this from a nutrition and hydration standpoint.
Very good question. First of all, I must say one thing, that it's completely thoroughbred fitness is pure science nowadays, and it's for a quite long time, to be honest. Now, the thing is that how science, it's a science because, there are some, evidence-based things that are involved in the training nowadays. To make an athlete feel motivated and to help him understand that where he's standing, where he was before, there are certain evaluation parameters, there are some testing stuff that you do with an athlete based on where he's weak, where he's strong. And then, you make a very effective profiling. You create effective profiling of that athlete, taking into account the specificity required, And then that's how you keep on evaluating the player depending upon how you as a coach create a parameter for him. Many books have their own standardization, of testing athlete or have progressive cycle based, on that. But I personally strongly believe, if you ask me as a coach, I have my own system of, testing my players and creating a very, effective and very engaged system of testing them and helping them understand where they stand now and where they were before. Because sometimes what happens is that they do very well in fitness testing and all, but they will be complete opposite copy in an actual game, and you will be surprised. You will say, they have been very good in a fitness test. They did a very good deep test. They were very good with the strengthening of the testing while testing the core and agility and speed test done, But when they start applying actually in a game, they will be the opposite of that. So now there are two different, contradictions. I strongly believe science is completely in place in fitness, and fitness is pure science. But at the same time, we shall not, deprive ourselves of the traditional method of training, where we should understand, that we train our mind. Apart from the science, we should train our mind very, very strongly along the lines of, the science of fitness as we are applying in the training. Because if a strong mind resides in a healthy body, and many players nowadays are not really working on the mind. They are depending on the science, but they are not using their brains, So if you are not using the brains, your physical ability stands null and void,
Sure.
It doesn't makes any sense.
Sure.
So, but the question is well accepted. It's pure science, but it should be applied by the best hands, It should be used to the perfect. It's not just because science, you blindly follow it. You have to use your head and work on the principles.
I like how you said about testing, that before you start any program, you're doing testing, you're on those parameters, and then you're developing the program, you're working on the program, and then you're retesting. And so that process then helps the athlete to understand again what direction they're going in. Geeta, over to you on this question.
Thank you, Harsh. Like you aptly said, I think definitely it's a sports nutrition or sports science, and as the protocol is laid out, we do look at the culture, the food, and the family traditions, working with the players, eating habits, and you need to work with that intricate connection. We do blood works. So I think it's very, like you asked me a question, what about vegetarian athletes? And, I'm not saying about just vegetarian athletes who have nutritional deficiencies. Adolescents, young athletes also have nutritional deficiencies. And we know now that vitamin D is, it kind of spans across from young athletes as even 9-year-olds that I've consulted. all the way up, I think vitamin D definitely is a challenge with the urban living because of the pollution and for whatever reasons. And now we also know that vitamin D is so important because it has the immunomodulatory function. So the blood works itself based on a few basic tests based on the age. So that's again, we need to take into consideration what is the personal health history. What is also understanding family history. Now, if sometimes the guy is really lean and athletic, but always has high triglycerides, high cholesterol, sometimes even high visceral fat, and you wonder where is all that abdominal fat coming from. So you just have to kind of work with the whole scenario where you look at the diet recall, typically the food frequency. What are they vegetarian? Do they consume too many non-vegetarian foods like red meats? And is that why the bad cholesterol, the LDL, goes up really high? So when you tweak, just your choice of your protein-rich food, and like you aptly said, the science. Similarly, with even young girls, if you are looking at aesthetic sports, of course, there are some sports which are very weight specific. So over restricting calorie intake itself can thwart your menstrual cycle. And that can lead a cascading effect of, low mineral density, or, there are other challenges. So ensuring the holistic well-being, like you all have emphasized, the overall well-being in terms of how do you feel, are your foods that you're eating, sometimes, because I know that athletes have very early hours, they are sluggish after eating. So sometimes you wonder, are there nutritional deficiencies that you want to address? It could be as simple as anemia, and many times your hemoglobin is normal, but you could still be on the borderline of being anemic. So doing your blood parameters, the diagnostic tests, ensuring the guidelines. Now, again, to be able to say, if an athlete probably needs 2 grams per kg body weight of protein, educating that and simplifying that for an athlete to say, okay, you are 60 kgs and you need actually 120 grams of protein. And that's really on the higher end. Honestly, if you ask me, especially in the Indian scenario, and you, I think, have the best of both worlds and you relate to what I'm saying. So unlike, I don't know, maybe there are some athletes who are very conscious and very meticulous with their planning. But in a vegetarian athlete, again, there are challenges of getting those large, because even if we say you need to do those 20-25 grams of protein 4 times a day, just to be able to quantify that, because if you're vegetarian and you're just living off eggs, so to simplify that and to say that you eat 2 eggs, you get 12 grams, but you eat 2 egg whites, that's just 7 grams. So to be able to help them do the math and just, supporting them, hand-holding them. And I think parents are a great, backbone of the athlete. I think the parent community, I have huge respect for them, because if the athlete does well, it's honestly the parents that we owe, because the parents are so involved, especially I think I'm a mom myself. So it's never ending to be doing the catering service. Athletes have to be taught to be a bit independent, apart the science. Calculating the calorie intake, protein intake, teaching them the importance of, I know athletes who eat half kg chicken in one meal, but they do not like to eat vegetables in their food, as a part of a meal. So educating them, what are antioxidants, what are polyphenols, why is immunity important? They rather take that pill, but it's not helpful. So to be able to educate them and guide them, the importance of sleep. I know athletes who don't sleep for like 6 hours on an average. And honestly, your muscle mass is not going to go up. Now, muscle building, we all have been talking so much about. It's a science, but if any amount of high quality protein, even timed right, is not going to be effective if you are having a sleep debt. So recovery is extremely important, because then you automatically know that even with the quality protein, be it sleep protein, there is going to be delayed onset muscle soreness or DOMS. There's going to be some, sluggish, early morning training with lack of sleep, and obviously there's tiredness. So I think just as a holistic lifestyle, when we look at food, nutritional deficiency, and the age-appropriate safe dosage. I had an athlete and I said, there was a vitamin D deficiency, and I had told him to take a certain dosage. The mistake he did was, from the minor daily dose, he swapped to the loading dose, and he did not pay attention to the supplement chart, the table. So sometimes you have to double check and emphasize and kind of confirm, are you doing the right thing? Because Vitamin D also, like we've been talking of overdoing it, and you just think too much is too good and you're going to do better. It's not so. Some vitamins are fat soluble, they get stored in your liver. There are side effects and toxicity, because it's not like your B vitamins that get washed out in urine. So just to kind of, keep that ongoing dialogue or conversation, some nutritional supplementation when there is a genuine deficiency, and also ethical. Below 18 years of children, we do not want to do aggressive supplementation unless and until it's a very peak season or it's a competition cycle, because in the macro cycle, like you see, and as you all have already aptly pointed out, to ensure that you have your body composition goals going in the off season, higher weight bearing exercise, or you look at your training load and kind of do your backwards planning and kind of
right,
yeah, break up your smaller goals in your smaller cycles, so that you kind of not too rushed in the competition or in your peak season, because then your priorities shift there.
Yeah, there's so many components that go into it, but I like how you said that blood testing, looking at those nutrients and working in a systematic way, which players of all levels can gain from when they have an expert who they are consulting with. Maybe it's on a periodic basis, but at least they have a plan and you can see how they're moving forward. So I would highly recommend this kind of approach for all players, because you can only benefit from it. If it's okay, we'll go for another few minutes. It's getting close to about 7:20 India time. So we have one or two more questions coming in. So if it's fine, we'll go for another maybe 5-10 minutes and wrap up here. But there was one question on, do we have any age-wise parameters of fitness at a world level which can help us segregate average, good, elite athletes in tennis players, especially under 8, 10, 12, under 8, under 10, under 12. So here again, this, I'll maybe address the initial part of it. So there's a book by Anders Ericsson called Peak, which I believe I would suggest everyone to read it. But one of his findings from his study in elite athletes in all fields, music, medicine, sports, was that nobody got to a high level in their field without a tremendous amount of hard work. So even those children who started and maybe they were so-called talented where they got the skill early on quickly, even they had to put in a tremendous amount of hard work. So the point is that, genetics and talent is fine, but it's a lot of it is the training plan, the process, the work you put in. And so I'm a little bit, at under 8, under 10, under 12, the children are still maturing. And to try to say, oh, this person is elite, this person is not, I think it's a bit early in that cycle. And that until under 12, even research is showing, to just promote all the players, give them an equal opportunity, not to try to identify so early, but just let them grow into their bodies, let them mature more, give them the best opportunity. And then later on, that the athletes will sort of progress. But happy to, Vijayji, if you want to take it on in terms of maybe just the overall, elite level, good, and, your first level, second, third level, what sort of separates the athletes in terms of their athletic abilities?
I must say one thing, because see, the science and the people who are working and researching on these things, they are developing all these phases, of development and setting parameters. But me as a trainer always end up, looking for one thing, eventually, because these parameters stand nowhere and count nowhere, because eventually an athlete is going to grow beyond 12, 14, 16, 17, 18. And this is where the whole thing matters about measuring the parameters, because there will be a lot of deviations and changes now and then. And every country and every place, they have their own system of parameter, matching of parameters and standardization and all that stuff. But I personally say to the parents and all that stuff, that it's important that general criteria to be followed in terms of measuring their agility levels, measuring their flexibility level, their speed levels, I mean, again, I'm talking about testing analysis, and all junior level has different, seniors have different things and activities involved. So we can follow that parameters, which are basic, which are more encouraging for an athlete and don't make them feel, demoralized and feel small. Because if we start bringing in comparisons between age groups and all, a loss of, I've seen many times, I've seen depression and, discouragement building up. Okay. Although this is backed up thing, it's a good science-based thing, but I eventually feel that it is a later stage, to measure parameters. I mean, I eventually should say rather 14-year age onwards, we should talk about it.
Yeah. I think you raise an important point of using parameters, using measurements, but supporting the athletes and their teams through that. Because sometimes there are other factors that are going into, it's not just the athlete's effort. There could be other things, and it's a road, it's a journey, right? Up and down is part of every player's process. And so you're going to expect those downward times, or maybe things are not progressing in that direction despite your best efforts, but being supportive through that and keep working on the plan, staying consistent with your team, staying consistent with your plan over the long term can only benefit. So good points. We will take one more question. There is a question on how do the USA programs for an 11-year-old kid differ from what is taught in India? Difficult to answer in a sort of a generalized way. I think more than location of the program, a lot of it comes down to the coaches, the coaching team, the environment that they create. And so I think coaches that, are developing themselves, they have experience, they are coming to sessions like this and learning and sharing knowledge and moving themselves forward, are going to be developing their teams. And no matter where they are, they will be providing that quality of training. So I think it really comes down to quality of training. And any country, whether it's the US or India, is going to have some range. There are going to be programs providing a very good quality and programs that need to improve. And I think that one of the things that from a system context, we have to think about how can we improve all the coaches? What can we, like sessions like this, creating more knowledge sharing, raising the standard of coaching, courses, certifications, so many things that that can be done. I think if we can raise the level of coaching, we can raise the level of the program. And it brings me to Iceland's example. Iceland is a very small country, but they qualified for the final stage in the World Cup football, right? A huge accomplishment, and to play in that elite group. And one of the reasons they said they were able to accomplish that was because they focused on their coaching system. They got all of their coaches certified. They were putting a lot of resources into training all of their coaches. So no matter where you were in the country, you went to a program, you got a good quality experience. And so from an Indian context, of course, it's a much larger country, many, many regions. But I think the more we invest in developing coaches and developing that coach training system, the more the entire system is going to gain from it. So thank you for your question. Thank you, everyone. It's been a wonderful session. Thank you to all of the experts who have come and shared their knowledge, provided their time, and supported our spirit of bringing the community together and helping everyone, boosting everyone's spirits during this time. Greatly appreciate your expertise. Thank you to all our participants, everyone who has come to the session today. We appreciate the questions. We appreciate your presence and moving the spirit of Unite and Emerge Stronger forward. And it was a real pleasure. I thank the organizing team, Mohali Lawn Tennis Association, Tenicity, and Enerzal, the teamwork, all of the effort that went into putting the session together. So thank you all. Have a wonderful evening in India. And we look forward to hopefully doing more sessions like this in the future. And thank you, everyone. Bye.